You've been lied to about peace. They told you it comes from escaping the noise, from quitting your job, from moving to the mountains far away from stress. But if that were true, why do so many people who have everything, the house, the vacation, the freedom, still feel restless? Why do you, even on quiet days, still carry storms inside your chest, still feel the weight of worry and the sharp edge of anger? The truth is, peace doesn't come from changing your surroundings. It comes from changing your habits. Habits so simple, so small, that they almost feel invisible. Yet practiced daily, they build an inner strength that nothing outside can shake. And Buddhism has carried these habits for centuries, the kind of wisdom that doesn't fade with time, the kind that has kept monks calm in chaos, grounded in suffering, and unbreakable in the face of life's storms. These aren't lofty ideas. They are everyday practices, breathing, walking, eating, listening, that slowly transform you. They make you stronger without hardening you, softer without making you weak. Imagine waking up tomorrow, not dragged down by yesterday's worries, but standing tall inside, clear, steady, untouchable. Tonight, as you hear these lessons, something inside you will shift. The noise will quiet, the tension will loosen. And when morning comes, you'll see the world differently, still full of challenges, yes, but no longer able to break you. Because peace won't just be a wish, it will be your habit. Are you ready to begin? The path begins not in some temple on a mountaintop, but right here, in the daily mess of life. It begins in the moments that test you, the little irritations that scratch at your nerves, the frustrations that sneak in like shadows. These are not obstacles to peace, they are the training ground. There is a truth few dare to face. Peace is not found in avoiding life's storms, but in learning how to stand steady within them. And the first practice, the one that sets the tone for everything else, is learning to let small deaths of the ego happen every single day. A small death of the ego is what occurs when something stings your pride, when your plans are interrupted, when someone disrespects you, and instead of fighting back or clinging tight, you let it dissolve. You don't defend, you don't escalate, you don't take the bait. You let that tiny piece of ego die, and with it, the weight it carried. This practice sounds simple, but it is the most radical act of freedom. Because what truly exhausts us is not life itself, it is the constant need to protect the fragile mask we wear. Every rude driver, every thoughtless comment, every inconvenience threatens that mask, and we respond with irritation, anger, or resentment. But when you stop defending the ego, you start discovering a vast space inside you that cannot be harmed. Think about how many times in a single day your peace is stolen, not by tragedy, but by micro-annoyances. Someone cuts in line, your phone lags, a coworker speaks over you. Each of these moments feels small, yet together they form the chain that keeps you bound to reactivity. Breaking that chain begins with practicing detachment in the smallest of tests. Detachment here does not mean indifference. It does not mean suppressing feelings. It means seeing the moment clearly, understanding that your reaction is optional, and choosing not to let it tighten its grip around you. This is a rehearsal for the bigger challenges life will bring, because if you can't release the little insults, how will you ever face real loss or heartbreak with strength? The ego feeds on being right, being respected, being in control. It hates to lose, hates to be ignored, hates to be humbled. But notice something. Every time you feed it, you feel worse, not better. You replay arguments in your head, you hold grudges, you justify your anger, and you suffer. Yet when you let the ego starve, when you allow its demands to die in small moments, you feel lighter. The world doesn't shrink, it opens. Buddhism calls this non-attachment, not clinging, not fighting, but flowing. Life is like a river. The ego wants to dam it, control it, freeze it in place. But the river always moves, and if you fight it, you drown. If you let go, you are carried with less effort than you imagined. This daily practice can begin in the smallest ways. When you feel the urge to correct someone over something meaningless, stop. Let the ego's need to prove itself die right there. When someone forgets to thank you, notice the flicker of hurt pride and let it pass without feeding it. When traffic slows you down, recognize the frustration rising and release it before it becomes a storm. These are the little deaths that free you. Each time you succeed, you carve a new path in your mind. Neuroscience has shown that every thought and action strengthens certain neural circuits. When you react with anger, those circuits grow stronger. When you let go, a different circuit grows, one of calm and resilience. Over time, you rewire your brain to choose peace naturally. What once felt impossible begins to feel effortless. This doesn't mean you become passive or allow injustice to go unchallenged. It means you choose wisely what is worth your energy. Most battles the ego fights are meaningless. They waste time, drain your spirit, and leave you weaker. By letting go of the trivial, you conserve your strength for what truly matters. Think of great teachers and wise elders you admire. Notice how little it takes to disturb them. They don't flinch at insults. They don't cling to praise. They don't crumble when life shifts. That calm presence didn't appear overnight. It was built in daily rehearsals, in the silent victories of letting ego die one small death at a time. Here's the secret. These small deaths are not losses. They are births. Every time a piece of ego falls away, a new part of your true self emerges. A self that doesn't need constant validation, doesn't tremble at criticism, doesn't collapse when plans change. This self is not brittle, it is vast, unshakable, alive. Peace is not about creating a perfect environment. It is about training the mind to stay free, no matter the environment. You practice on the small annoyances so that when larger storms come, and they will, you are already prepared. The mind you have built will not betray you. Letting go in these micro moments also softens your relationships. Think about how many arguments begin not from real problems, but from small slights and wounded pride. One careless word, one tone of voice, one forgotten gesture. When you let your ego die instead of lashing back, you break the cycle. The argument never begins. Peace flows outward as well as inward. There is also humility in this practice. Every time you let go of ego's demand to be right, you remember that you are human, that others are human, and that perfection is not the point. Humility does not make you small, it makes you vast. When you no longer need to defend a fragile identity, you can meet others as they are, without masks. Some people fear that if they let go of ego, they will be weak, walked over, ignored. The opposite is true. Ego is fragile, it breaks easily, and when it breaks, you are thrown into chaos. True strength comes from the self beyond ego, the self that is not defined by praise or blame. That self is unbreakable. When you begin to practice this daily, you'll notice something subtle. The world feels less hostile. It's not that people change, it's that your lens changes. A rude comment no longer feels like an attack, just a passing sound. An inconvenience no longer feels like punishment, just part of the flow. Life becomes lighter, easier, freer. This is how peace grows, not in one grand leap, but in thousands of small steps. Each small death of ego clears space inside you, like pulling weeds from a garden, and in that space, peace naturally blooms. You might wonder, how do I know if I am really practicing this? The answer is simple. Notice how quickly you recover. In the beginning, you may still feel irritation, but instead of carrying it for hours, you let it go in minutes. With practice, minutes become seconds, and one day you realize the irritation barely rises at all. That is the sign of strength. Do not underestimate the power of these small deaths. They are the foundation for everything else: gratitude, compassion, clarity, wisdom. Without them, the ego keeps pulling you back into its endless battles. With them, you begin to live from a deeper place, where peace is not a fragile mood but a steady state of being. And when you face the inevitable bigger losses of life, aging, sickness, death, you will already know the path. You will already know how to release, how to surrender, how to remain steady. These daily rehearsals are not just about today. They are preparing you for the ultimate letting go. So, let today be your training ground. Notice the next small sting of pride, the next wave of irritation, the next interruption of your plans. In that moment, pause. Feel the ego demand attention, and then gently let it go. Let it die, and notice the peace that fills its place. That peace is not borrowed, it is yours. The practice of small deaths of ego is not glamorous, not dramatic, not something others will applaud. It is quiet, internal, almost invisible. But its impact is infinite, because each time the ego dies, the real you comes more alive. This is the path, steady, daily, simple. 1,000 little moments, each one a chance to die to the false and awaken to the true. And as you keep walking, one day you realize that what once felt like death was actually freedom. When the ego loosens its grip, life feels lighter. But peace is not built on letting go alone. It is also built on what we take in, on the way we nourish the body and the mind. Every meal becomes an unnoticed ritual of life and death, a moment where something living becomes part of us. Yet we rush through it, scrolling screens, lost in chatter, forgetting the depth of what rests before us. To eat with reflection is to see the chain of life that sustains you, to touch gratitude so real that even a single bite feels sacred. The 5 reflections before eating are not rules, but invitations. They invite awareness into the act of nourishment, transforming it from survival into practice. The first reflection is about the source of the food. Every grain of rice, every piece of fruit, every drop of water carries a story. Soil, rain, sunlight, and human hands all work together to bring it here. When this is seen clearly, food is no longer just a product. It is life itself passing through countless forms before entering yours. The awareness of origin deepens humility. You realize you are never eating alone, because inside every mouthful are clouds, rivers, farmers, and unseen lives. The second reflection is labor. Behind the meal lies effort. Someone planted seeds, someone harvested, someone transported, someone prepared. Even if you cooked it yourself, the chain of effort stretches back further than your eyes can see. When you pause before eating and hold this in mind, a sense of reverence grows. Carelessness fades. It is harder to waste, harder to eat in distraction, harder to take more than you need. Food becomes a testament of work, a bridge of effort linking thousands of lives to yours. The third reflection is purpose. Why are you eating? The body requires energy to live, but food has also become an escape, a drug, a comfort, a distraction. Reflection here means asking whether you are eating for strength or for craving. This honesty reshapes the relationship with food. Meals become fuel for clarity, not indulgence for restlessness. It does not mean denying pleasure, but seeing clearly whether pleasure is enslaving or liberating you. Eating with purpose disciplines the mind gently. Each bite reminds you of the path you have chosen, a life not wasted in mindless consumption, but directed toward growth. The fourth reflection is worthiness. This is not about guilt, but about integrity. Are your actions, thoughts, and words worthy of the nourishment you are receiving? To see food as a gift means recognizing responsibility. When you eat, you are not only feeding yourself, you are agreeing to use this energy for something meaningful. This habit softens greed and sharpens intention. Meals become vows, silent commitments to live in a way that honors the food that keeps you alive. The fifth reflection is effect. Food does not end when you swallow. It becomes you, your strength, your weakness, your clarity, your fog. To pause before eating and remember that what enters you will shape your body and mind tomorrow plants mindfulness into the act. You no longer eat carelessly because you know food is not neutral. Some meals bring lightness, others bring heaviness. Some sharpen the mind, others dull it. Reflection trains awareness of consequence, making each choice more deliberate, less enslaved to impulse. Practicing these reflections reshapes daily life. Meals no longer rush by unnoticed. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, even a simple snack become moments of mindfulness. You begin to chew slower, taste deeper, feel more gratitude. Eating turns into meditation without needing silence or special posture. Every bite becomes a lesson in interconnectedness. Modern life has stripped eating of sacredness. Fast food, hurried lunches, distracted dinners have made us forget the depth of nourishment. But with these reflections, even a single sip of water can return to its true place as a miracle. The habit is simple: pause, reflect, eat with awareness. The transformation, however, is profound. Anxiety softens, gratitude grows, discipline strengthens, and peace becomes rooted in the most ordinary part of daily life. This practice also heals the restless relationship many people have with food. Constant craving, emotional eating, guilt after indulgence, all of these patterns weaken when you pause with the 5 reflections. Because the act of pausing interrupts impulse, the reflections build space between hunger and reaction, and in that space, clarity arises. You see whether you are eating to escape or to nourish, and that awareness itself changes the choice. The body becomes more balanced, the mind feels more present. Gratitude deepens naturally, and gratitude itself nourishes in ways food cannot. A grateful mind feels lighter, calmer, harder to disturb. It carries a quiet joy that spills into the rest of life. In this way, eating becomes more than survival. It becomes a daily meditation, a rhythm of mindfulness that grounds you again and again. These reflections, practiced daily, do not add complexity, they restore simplicity. They show that peace is not found in rare retreats, but in the small rituals repeated each day. And when those rituals are infused with mindfulness, they cease to be ordinary. They become the soil of strength and calm that carries you everywhere. Eating with the 5 reflections is not a demand, but a gift. A chance to transform necessity into wisdom, to turn a daily act into a daily practice of peace. The more you live this way, the more you realize that every act can carry the same depth, that peace does not wait in the extraordinary, it begins here, with the food before you, with the pause before the bite, with the reflections that awaken you to the life already in your hands. When food becomes a daily practice of gratitude, the heart grows softer, but softness alone is not enough. Life will still bring endings, and without training, endings feel like wounds that never heal. To live in peace, one must not only give thanks for what is here, but also learn how to release when it goes. This is where the practice of impermanence enters, not as a concept to debate, but as something to feel with your own hands and eyes every day. The mind resists change, clings to what is pleasant, pushes away what is unpleasant, and tries to hold the world still. But the world never stands still. Flowers bloom, candles burn, leaves dry, bodies age, relationships shift. By choosing an object and observing its slow change, you step into a classroom that life is already teaching, but most ignore. This practice is not about the object, it is about your relationship with change itself. When you place a flower on your table and watch it each day, you see beauty unfold and then fade. The petals lose their strength, the color dulls, the fragrance disappears. What you held as perfect yesterday is different today, and tomorrow it will no longer be the same. Instead of pretending this process is sad, you meet it with awareness. The flower does not mourn its fading. It fulfills its life fully, moment by moment. By watching, you learn to do the same. The candle teaches in another way. You light it, and the flame shines bright. As it burns, the wax disappears hour by hour, until nothing remains but smoke and melted wax. Each second the flame lives, it also dies. It teaches that life and loss are not separate events but one continuous process. By training your mind to watch this, you begin to accept that your own life is like the candle, bright for a time, yet slowly burning away. This awareness is not meant to frighten, it frees you. You see the preciousness of each moment more clearly, and waste less time chasing illusions of permanence. Objects show impermanence without argument. A fruit ripens and then rots, metal rusts, clothes fray, paper yellows, nothing escapes change. When you place your attention on these processes daily, the truth of impermanence stops being abstract and becomes embodied knowledge. You don't just know it in your head, you feel it in your heart. And that feeling makes it easier to face change in your own life. This practice has profound effects on attachment. When you hold a beloved object and see that it too will age and dissolve, you begin to release the desperate clinging that creates suffering. You can still love deeply, still carefully, but without fear of loss consuming you. Love becomes more open, more free, because it does not demand forever. Observing impermanence through objects also trains patience. Watching slow change requires waiting. A flower does not wilt in an instant, nor does a candle melt in one breath. You return to the object daily, and each day you notice subtle shifts. This daily noticing sharpens your awareness, teaching you to see the fine details of change in life as well. You become less surprised when things shift, more ready to adapt, more at peace with uncertainty. There is a gentle discipline in keeping an object for this purpose. It becomes a mirror of your own resistance. Some days you may feel sorrow as the flower fades, other days indifference, other days wonder. The object reflects your mind back to you. By staying with it, you begin to notice how much of your suffering is not in the change itself, but in the story you attach to it. The practice also extends beyond the object. Once you train the mind this way, you begin to see impermanence everywhere. You hear it in the fading sound of a bell, see it in the shifting light of afternoon, feel it in the rhythm of your breath appearing, dissolving, appearing again. Life becomes a flow rather than a fight, and with that realization comes peace. Learning impermanence through objects also builds resilience. When real loss arrives, a friendship ends, health declines, a loved one passes, you are not unprepared. You have rehearsed through the small deaths of petals, the slow dimming of flames. You have already trained the mind not to grasp, not to deny, not to despair. Loss is still painful, but it no longer breaks you. There is also beauty in impermanence that only reveals itself with attention. The faded flower holds a fragile charm different from its bloom. The melted candle leaves patterns unique to its burn. Rust creates colors the metal never had in youth. By watching, you discover that every stage carries its own form of beauty, and this shifts the way you see your own life. Aging, instead of being feared, becomes another expression of beauty. This daily habit does not require grand effort. A single flower in a glass, a candle lit each night, a piece of fruit on your counter, all become teachers if you let them. The key is consistency. By returning every day, you train the mind not to forget. Consistency turns knowledge into habit, and habit into strength. With time, you realize that impermanence is not your enemy, but your greatest ally. Because without impermanence, no pain would end, no joy would arise, no growth would be possible. The seed would never become a tree, the child would never become an adult, and sorrow would last forever. Impermanence is the fabric of freedom. By training with small objects, you learn to see this truth clearly, until even in the hardest moments, you can whisper to yourself, "This too will change." Living this way does not numb you, it makes you more alive. Every sip of tea, every glance at the sky, every breath carries depth when you know it will not return. You stop postponing life, stop waiting for better moments, and instead meet this moment fully. That is the gift of impermanence. The practice of observing objects is simple, but simplicity is its power. It strips away excuses, leaves no place for avoidance. It reminds you daily that clinging is futile, that release is possible, that peace is found not by holding but by letting flow. And as you continue, you see that what once felt like loss is actually the path to freedom. By watching a flower fade, you learn to release pride. By watching a candle burn, you learn to release fear. By watching fruit rot, you learn to release control. And each release clears space for peace to settle deeper into your being. In this way, impermanence becomes not a shadow hanging over life, but the light that reveals its true value. Every change, every ending, every shift becomes a reminder to live fully now, to love deeply now, to walk gently now, because nothing will stay, and that is precisely why everything matters. When the truth of impermanence settles into the heart, life feels less heavy. The fading of flowers, the passing of sounds, the quiet shift of breath, all whisper that nothing is fixed. But even with this awareness, the mind still clings to noise. Thoughts run endlessly, words spill too quickly, gestures carry hidden tension. To truly live in peace, the mind needs rest. And rest is not found in distraction, it is found in silence. Silence here is not only the absence of speech, it is the quieting of the whole being, a retreat from constant signaling, explaining, defending, and performing. At home, where habits run strongest, creating silence becomes a radical act. It interrupts the cycle of noise that never stops, the television humming, the phones buzzing, the endless conversations that often say nothing. Noble silence is different from ordinary silence because it carries intention. It is not cold withdrawal or avoidance. It is a practice of deep resetting. Dedicating a time each day to silence transforms the atmosphere of a home. It softens conflicts before they arise, clears out mental clutter, and allows energy to gather again. When no words are spoken, the heart learns to listen. When gestures pause, the body learns to relax. When even facial expressions rest, the mind unclenches. This quiet is not emptiness, it is fullness without disturbance. Silence reveals what speech often hides. When the noise of talking falls away, you begin to notice the undercurrent of your emotions, the tension in your body, the restlessness in your mind. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. But the discomfort is a doorway. It shows you what you carry beneath the surface. With time, the silence becomes medicine, soothing the hidden wounds, slowing the racing mind, settling the storm. In a home, silence is not only for the one practicing, it spreads like fragrance. Children feel it, partners sense it, even pets relax within it. A household with moments of noble silence is not cold or empty, it is a place where presence is honored. The energy of such a space changes the way everyone moves within it. Arguments reduce, anxiety softens, appreciation grows. Silence also sharpens awareness of words. When you practice not speaking, you begin to see how much of daily speech is unnecessary, repetitive, or careless. You notice how often words are used to fill space rather than to share meaning. This recognition brings wisdom. When you do speak again, words become more deliberate, more kind, more aligned with truth. Speech becomes a gift rather than a reflex. The body, too, learns through silence. Gestures that often carry irritation or impatience, rolling eyes, sighing, crossing arms fall away. The face rests, no longer forced into smiles or frowns. This release brings deep rest to the nervous system. Silence becomes a healing bath, not only for the mind, but for the body itself. To dedicate silence each day does not require long hours. Even a short period set with intention reshapes the rhythm of the whole day. Early morning silence creates clarity for everything that follows. Evening silence prepares the mind for rest. The important part is consistency, because the mind grows quieter not through occasional retreats but through steady training. In the beginning, silence may feel like emptiness, but gradually it reveals itself as fullness. Within silence you notice the sound of birds, the breath in your chest, the subtle presence of those you live with. Life grows richer, not poorer. The absence of noise makes room for depth. Practicing noble silence at home also teaches restraint. Not every thought needs to be spoken, not every feeling needs to be expressed immediately. This discipline prevents many conflicts. Words that might have been sharp dissolve in the quiet. Anger that might have spilled out cools down before it harms. In this way, silence protects relationships. It is not suppression, it is protection through wisdom. Silence opens a door to mindfulness. Without the distraction of words, awareness can turn inward. The mind begins to notice its own patterns, the way thoughts arise and fade, the way moods shift. This awareness is the root of transformation. By seeing the mind clearly, you are less controlled by it. Noble silence is not passive, it is an active practice of liberation. At home, where habits run deep and tensions often build, silence is especially powerful. Families rarely practice silence together, yet those who do discover a new dimension of connection. Sitting quietly in the same space, not needing to fill it with chatter, creates a shared peace that words cannot achieve. Relationships deepen without speaking, because presence itself becomes communication. The practice also restores energy. Constant noise drains attention. The brain burns energy, processing endless words and signals. Silence gives the mind a chance to recharge. After silence, thoughts feel clearer. Creativity awakens, focus strengthens. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Silence is not a waste of time. It is the ground from which clarity grows. For many, silence feels frightening because it exposes emptiness inside. But meeting that emptiness is essential. It is not a void to fear, but a space that reveals truth. Within silence, the self that is built on performance and defense begins to soften. What remains is a deeper presence, one that does not need constant validation. This presence is strong, peaceful, and free. Silence also teaches humility. Without words, you are no longer the center. You stop pushing your thoughts into the world and instead allow the world to reveal itself to you. This humility is not weakness. It is the wisdom of listening. Through silence, you hear life more clearly than through endless speaking. To practice noble silence at home requires intention, boundaries, and respect. It may mean turning off devices, asking others for cooperation, or creating a simple ritual like lighting a candle to mark the beginning and end. Over time, it becomes a cherished rhythm, a time everyone in the household respects. What begins as effort slowly becomes natural as silence weaves itself into daily life. In silence, even ordinary things become extraordinary. A cup of tea, the sound of breathing, the warmth of sunlight all reveal depths unnoticed before. This is the reward of noble silence. The world becomes alive in ways noise had hidden. Through daily silence, the home itself changes character. It shifts from a place of constant doing into a place of being. Peace does not need to be searched for elsewhere. It is cultivated right here, within the walls of ordinary life. The mind no longer feels trapped by constant activity because it knows that silence is always available. The art of noble silence is not about rejecting words, but about restoring balance. Words are precious, but without silence they lose weight. Silence gives words meaning, just as space gives music rhythm. To cultivate silence daily is to train the mind to rest, to reset, and to return to its natural clarity. When practiced with sincerity, noble silence does more than calm the mind. It transforms the way you live. It strengthens patience, deepens love, and reveals a peace that was always waiting beneath the noise. In silence, you discover that the deepest truths are not spoken, they are lived. Silence clears the inner air, but the body too needs a way to join in the practice of peace. Words can rest, gestures can rest, but the feet are restless, they want to move. Instead of seeing walking only as a way to get somewhere, it can become the natural extension of silence, a moving meditation where each step is not a rush to the future, but a return to now. Walking with intention, without the weight of destination, turns an ordinary act into a profound path of mindfulness. When you walk without pressure to arrive, the world unfolds differently. Each step is complete in itself, not a means to an end. The body feels lighter, the breath steadier, the senses more alive. The sound of footsteps, the contact with the ground, the rhythm of movement, all become anchors that tether the mind to presence. No special place is required, no distant trail or temple. Even the path from one room to another can carry depth if walked with full awareness. The first shift is slowing down. Modern life has turned walking into rushing. Sidewalks and hallways are places of speed, where the mind runs faster than the legs. To practice walking with intention is to gently interrupt this momentum, to reduce the speed until every step feels grounded. This slowing down retrains the nervous system, softening stress and calming the restless energy that keeps the mind scattered. Breath naturally joins this rhythm. Each inhalation and exhalation syncs with the steps, forming a simple harmony. One step with the in-breath, another with the out-breath, repeated without strain. Breath and body align, and the mind follows. This is not forced, it is discovered, like slipping into a natural current. The body begins to remember how it was designed to move, not in frantic chase, but in steady flow. Awareness widens during mindful walking. Instead of being locked in thought, the senses awaken. The ground beneath your feet speaks of texture and weight. Air against the skin tells of temperature and movement. Sounds arrive not as intrusions but as companions, birdsong, wind, even traffic. The world that often feels like background noise becomes a living presence. Each step confirms that you are part of this presence, not separate from it. Walking with intention also transforms the relationship with time. Normally, walking is used to shorten time, to shrink the gap between where you are and where you want to be. When walking becomes practice, time itself feels different. Each step becomes an arrival. There is no waiting for the future, no dissatisfaction with the present. Walking becomes freedom from hurry, an embodied reminder that life is already happening here. This habit changes the way the mind holds problems. Thoughts that once spun endlessly soften when the body moves slowly, one step at a time. Difficult emotions, when carried into mindful walking, begin to settle like dust in still water. The act of walking creates space around them, breaking the grip of obsession. Even a short walk practiced this way can release tension that hours of thinking cannot resolve. Walking with intention also cultivates gratitude for the body itself. Feet, legs, breath, posture, all work together without demand for recognition. Pausing to feel the gift of being able to walk, even a few steps, shifts perspective. Many cannot walk freely due to illness or injury, yet those who can often treat it as nothing. Walking practice restores respect for the body's quiet service. This respect deepens into love, not vanity, but a humble recognition of life expressed through movement. There is a discipline in this practice too. The mind resists slowing down. It wants to hurry, to arrive, to think ahead. To keep bringing it back to the step beneath you is a form of training. Each time you succeed, the mind grows stronger in its capacity to stay. Over time, the habit of presence extends beyond walking into daily tasks, washing, cooking, listening. Walking becomes the route from which presence spreads into all of life. In relationships, mindful walking also has a quiet effect. When you walk with others without rush, sharing silence, a gentle bond forms. Words are not needed because the shared steps communicate something deeper. Families, friends, even couples who practice walking slowly together often find conflicts ease and understanding grows, not through discussion but through shared presence. The earth itself becomes part of the practice. Each step touches ground that holds countless lives, countless histories. When walked with awareness, the earth is not something beneath you, it is something you belong to. Walking with reverence deepens the sense of interconnection. The ground is no longer taken for granted, but felt as sacred support. This awareness naturally nurtures care for the environment, as gratitude for the ground turns into responsibility to protect it. Mindful walking also becomes a teacher of balance. Every step requires letting go of one foot before placing the other. Without releasing, you cannot move forward. Walking itself becomes a lesson in non-attachment. Each step is both a letting go and an arrival. This rhythm mirrors the truth of life. To live is to release what has passed and arrive in what is here. Even short daily walks practiced with intention create lasting transformation. A few minutes in the morning can set the tone for the day, grounding the mind before chaos begins. An evening walk can clear the residue of stress, preparing the body for rest. Over time, these small practices accumulate into resilience, patience, and clarity. There is no need to change walking into a dramatic ritual. Its power lies in its simplicity. A hallway, a backyard, a street corner, all can serve as paths of practice. The essential shift is not where you walk, but how you walk. With intention, without rush, with awareness in each step. This practice reveals that the journey is not separate from the destination. Each step is already arrival. Life is not waiting at some distant goal, but unfolding here, in the steady rhythm of breath and step. Walking with intention makes this truth visible, not in words, but in experience. As silence trains the tongue, walking trains the body. Together they teach the mind to rest. And when the mind rests, strength grows, not the tense strength of resistance, but the quiet strength of presence. Walking with intention is this strength in motion, calm, grounded, free. Each step taken with intention teaches presence, but presence alone is not enough. Peace deepens when presence is joined with reverence. To walk mindfully is to honor the ground beneath you, but to live mindfully is to honor the people before you. Not through spoken praise, not through outward gestures that can feel forced, but through an inner bow that silently acknowledges the worth and struggles of every person you encounter. This is the habit of bowing inwardly, and it transforms ordinary interactions into sacred exchanges. Bowing inwardly does not mean lowering your head or folding your hands every time you meet someone. It is an attitude of the heart, a silent recognition that each person carries a story you cannot see. Some carry invisible wounds, some carry silent joys, some carry battles they have not spoken of to anyone. To bow inwardly is to say, without words, I see that you are human, just like me, and I respect the journey you walk. This quiet acknowledgement dissolves judgment before it takes root. The mind is quick to categorize friend, stranger, rival. inferior, superior. These labels shape our reactions and close the heart. An inward bow cuts through these categories. It reminds you that behind every label is a being with fears, dreams, and dignity. By practicing this, you disarm the automatic harshness of the mind. Even brief encounters, a cashier, a bus driver, a co-worker, become opportunities to cultivate compassion rather than indifference. The power of this practice lies in its invisibility. No one knows you are doing it, and yet the energy it creates subtly shifts your presence. You speak softer, listen better, act with more patience. Others feel this without being told. Relationships grow warmer, not because you lecture yourself to be kind, but because reverence flows naturally from within. Bowing inwardly also softens arrogance. The ego thrives on comparison, seeking to elevate itself above others. But when you silently bow to those you meet, you dismantle this hierarchy. You see that no one is beneath you, no one above you. Each life holds weight, even if the world does not recognize it. This humility does not weaken you, it grounds you. By bowing inwardly, you free yourself from the exhausting need to dominate or impress. This practice extends even to those who hurt you. To bow inwardly to someone who insults or dismisses you is not to excuse their actions, but to acknowledge that they too are shaped by pain and ignorance. You silently honor their humanity, while not feeding their harm. This inner bow protects your heart from bitterness. It allows you to respond with strength, without hatred. Parents who practice inward bowing often notice a transformation with their children. Instead of seeing them only as extensions of themselves, they begin to see them as full beings with their own dignity. This subtle shift changes the way they guide, discipline, and listen. Children feel more respected, and respect grows in return. In workplaces, the habit of inward bowing dissolves much of the tension that comes from constant competition. To silently bow to a colleague is to remind yourself that they too are struggling, that their mistakes do not define them, and that their successes do not diminish you. This creates an environment of quiet cooperation, even when nothing is spoken. There is also a healing effect on loneliness. Many people feel unseen, invisible in the rush of life. When you practice inward bowing, you train yourself to truly notice others, even in passing. A silent recognition, though invisible to them, changes the way you carry yourself. It restores your sense of connection to the wider human family, reminding you that you are never isolated, only often unaware. The habit also deepens gratitude. When you silently bow to those who serve you, a farmer who grew your food, a worker who built your home, a stranger who cleans the streets, you cultivate awareness of how interdependent life island. Gratitude grows not only for the visible kindness around you, but for the unseen labor that sustains your life every day. Bowing inwardly can even be extended to yourself. When shame or self-criticism arises, bowing inwardly to your own being acknowledges that you too carry struggles and deserve compassion. This self-bow is not indulgence, it is fairness. It allows you to treat yourself with the same dignity you wish to give others. Over time, this inner practice shifts the very structure of perception. Instead of scanning others for flaws, you begin to see their shared humanity first. Instead of reacting with irritation, you pause with recognition. This pause is powerful. It changes the trajectory of countless interactions, steering them away from conflict and toward respect. The habit does not require special effort. It can be as subtle as a single breath when meeting someone's eyes, as quiet as a mental nod when passing a stranger on the street. What matters is the sincerity. Even if the other person never knows, your heart knows, and it becomes lighter with each bow. Inward bowing also trains you to release resentment. It is difficult to bow, even silently, while holding anger. The act itself softens the grip of grudges. Over time, repeated bows dissolve the heavy knots of bitterness that burden the heart. Forgiveness grows not as a dramatic event, but as a natural byproduct of consistent reverence. When combined with walking meditation, inward bowing turns each encounter on the path into practice. Each step grounds you, each bow connects you. Movement and reverence merge, and life itself becomes pilgrimage. This practice also supports courage. To bow inwardly to another's dignity is to remind yourself that your own dignity is intact. Respecting others does not diminish you. It strengthens the ground you stand on. From this strength, you can meet challenges without shrinking and without needing to push others down. Inward bowing is one of the most subtle but powerful habits. It requires no ritual, no outward display, no approval from others. Yet its impact ripples through every corner of life. It dissolves pride, builds patience, deepens compassion, and reveals the shared humanity that too often lies hidden beneath roles and appearances. Peace grows not only through silence and mindful walking, but through reverence woven into daily encounters. And when reverence becomes natural, conflict weakens, compassion strengthens, and the heart learns to bow not only to people but to life itself. When the heart learns to bow inwardly, even without words, respect quietly fills the space between people. Yet respect alone is fragile if the words that follow are careless. Speech is one of the most powerful forces in daily life, able to heal or wound, to calm or inflame, to bring connection or division. The tongue moves quickly, often faster than the mind, and once words are released, they cannot be taken back. To live with peace requires not only silence at times, but also discipline when speaking. This is where the practice of pausing before words, weighing them through the three gates, truth, kindness, and necessity, becomes essential. The first gate is truth. Words without truth create confusion, mistrust, and suffering. Lies may seem small in the moment, but they grow like cracks in stone, weakening the foundation of relationships and corroding integrity. Pausing to ask, "Is this true?" interrupts the reflex to exaggerate, conceal, or twist facts. Truth here is not harsh bluntness, it is clarity without distortion. Even silence can be more truthful than words that hide reality. By passing words through the gate of truth, you anchor yourself in honesty, and honesty brings freedom from the weight of deception. The second gate is kindness. Words can be true yet still cut like blades. To ask, "Is this kind?" reminds the speaker that truth is best delivered with compassion. Kindness does not mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means shaping speech in a way that preserves dignity and reduces unnecessary harm. When truth and kindness meet, words gain power without cruelty. They reach the listener not as attacks but as guidance or support. This practice reshapes the tone of communication, softening harshness and building trust. The third gate is necessity. Many words are true and even kind, but not necessary. Endless talking drains energy, distracts the mind, and fills silence with noise. The gate of necessity asks, "Does this need to be said now?" If the answer is no, silence is stronger. Speaking only what is necessary sharpens language into something meaningful. It protects others from being overwhelmed and preserves attention for what matters. By practicing this, speech becomes lean, deliberate, and valued. These three gates together act as guardians at the threshold of the tongue. Without them, words escape unchecked, often leaving regret. With them, speech slows down, thought deepens, and peace expands. The practice does not silence you permanently, it refines your voice, so that when you speak, your words carry weight, clarity, and care. Pausing before speech also cultivates mindfulness. The pause itself interrupts the rush of emotion. Anger, impatience, and anxiety often push words out, before the mind has caught up. By training yourself to stop, even for a breath, you give space for wisdom to enter. That space is where choice lives, the choice to speak differently or to remain silent. Over time, this habit rewires the mind, reactivity fades, and thoughtful response grows natural. In relationships, the three gates act as protectors. Many conflicts begin not from actions, but from careless words. A sharp remark, an unnecessary criticism, a reckless comment can ignite arguments that last for days. When speech passes through the gates, such sparks never ignite. Truthful, kind, and necessary words strengthen bonds instead of straining them. Families, friendships, and partnerships all benefit from this simple discipline. In workplaces, the practice shifts culture. Meetings often overflow with unnecessary talk, half-truths, and harsh judgments disguised as honesty. By pausing before speaking, you contribute differently. Your words become rare, but when they come, they carry impact. Colleagues begin to listen more carefully, and your presence commands quiet authority. Speech filtered through the gates does not only protect peace, it builds respect. There is also a subtle effect on self-perception. Words shape not only how others see you, but also how you see yourself. Each time you speak truthfully, kindly, and with necessity, you reinforce an inner image of integrity. You begin to trust your own voice, knowing it will not betray your values. This inner trust quiets doubt and strengthens confidence without arrogance. The practice also dismantles gossip. Gossip thrives on words that fail all three gates: half-true, unkind, and unnecessary. By pausing, you notice the urge to spread stories or opinions that harm. With discipline, you stop the cycle, refusing to let your voice become an instrument of division. This refusal protects not only others, but also your own peace, because gossip always circles back to wound those who indulge in it. Children raised with the example of three-gated speech learn early that words matter. They grow in environments where language uplifts instead of tears down, where honesty is valued, and where silence is not feared. They learn that restraint is strength, not weakness, and that kindness is not softness, but wisdom. Such children carry these habits into adulthood, spreading the effect outward across generations. The habit also supports forgiveness. When anger rises, the tongue longs to strike. By pausing, you give anger time to cool. The words that might have deepened wounds dissolve before they are spoken. This prevents scars in relationships that might otherwise take years to heal. Forgiveness often begins not with grand gestures, but with the simple act of not saying something harmful in the heat of the moment. To live by the three gates is to value silence as much as speech. Silence becomes not emptiness, but choice, a sign of discipline rather than lack. When you speak less but with more care, your presence becomes stronger, not weaker. People learn to listen because they sense your words are considered, not careless. The gates also train humility. To ask whether something is true requires honesty with yourself. To ask whether it is kind requires empathy. To ask whether it is necessary requires restraint. Each gate reminds you that speech is not about proving yourself, but about serving peace. This humility transforms the act of speaking into an act of practice. The discipline of three-gated speech also cultivates patience. Words spoken too quickly often cause harm. Words shaped by patience carry healing. By slowing down, even slightly, you develop endurance against impulsive expression. Patience in speech spreads to patience in thought and action, strengthening the whole character. This practice is not about perfection. There will be times when words slip through unexamined, but each time you notice and return to the gates, the habit strengthens. Over months and years, the change becomes clear not only to you, but to those around you. Peace grows not as an abstract idea, but as the living fruit of disciplined speech. To pause before speaking is to honor the weight of language. Words can never be recalled, but they can be shaped before release. The three gates are simple, but within them lies profound wisdom. They protect relationships, cultivate peace, and reveal strength in restraint. Speech that passes through them becomes more than communication. It becomes practice, a living expression of mindfulness and compassion woven into daily life. When words pass safely through the three gates, the mind feels lighter and relationships become calmer. Yet another obstacle often remains: the weight of expectations. Even when we speak kindly and truthfully, we still carry hidden assumptions into every meeting, every task, every encounter. These silent demands how we want others to behave, how we want outcomes to unfold, how we want to be recognized tie us back to frustration and disappointment. To free ourselves from this cycle, we practice carrying an empty bowl attitude, approaching life as monks approach alms, open, receptive, and without the heavy grip of ego. An empty bowl does not resist or demand, it simply receives. It does not choose which food is worthy and which is not. It accepts what is offered with humility and gratitude. When you cultivate this same attitude, you stop trying to force life into the shape of your desires. You enter each moment ready to receive what it gives, even if it is not what you expected. This openness dissolves much of the suffering that comes from clinging to outcomes. Openness in this way does not mean passivity. It is not about resigning yourself to whatever happens, but about releasing the tension that arises from rigid control. When the bowl is empty, it is ready to be filled. When the mind is empty of fixed expectations, it is ready to respond wisely. Life often surprises us, and those surprises are more easily embraced when we are not locked into a single script of how things should be. Carrying an empty bowl into conversations changes their entire tone. Most people enter discussions with rehearsed positions, prepared defenses, and hidden agendas. This prevents true listening. When you set these aside and approach with emptiness, you hear more clearly, you notice nuances, you understand perspectives without judgment. Others sense this openness and feel safer, more willing to share honestly. The conversation shifts from debate to dialogue, from collision to connection. The same principle applies to work. Many frustrations in tasks come not from the task itself, but from the story we attach to it. We expect it to be easy, or we expect recognition, or we expect perfection. When reality differs, we resist, complain, or lose focus. With an empty bowl attitude, you approach each task without preloaded frustration. You give your full attention to what is in front of you, free of demands for how it should unfold. This not only improves the quality of work, but also makes the process lighter. This practice also reveals hidden lessons. When you arrive empty, you are able to see what is offered, even in situations that appear unhelpful. An unpleasant coworker becomes a teacher of patience. A difficult project becomes a teacher of persistence. A mistake becomes a teacher of humility. Without an empty bowl, you dismiss these lessons because they do not match your expectations. With openness, every experience contributes to growth. Carrying an empty bowl attitude also softens the grip of ego. Ego thrives on expectations, how others should treat you, how life should reward you, how things should always go in your favor. Each unmet expectation feeds anger and resentment. When you approach empty, ego has no ground to stand on. Gratitude grows in its place because everything feels like a gift rather than a right. Even small gestures, like a smile from a stranger or a moment of rest, carry weight when received into an empty bowl. This practice is not easy because the mind clings naturally to plans and control. But with daily effort, you begin to notice when expectations arise. Each time you feel frustration, you can pause and ask, what expectation am I holding right now? By letting it go, you return to emptiness. The bowl is cleared again, ready to receive without resistance. In relationships, this attitude prevents disappointment from poisoning love. Many people burden their partners or friends with silent expectations, constant understanding, perfect behavior, unending attention. These are impossible to meet. Disappointment then breeds resentment. When you carry an empty bowl, you meet others as they are, not as you demand them to be. You receive what they offer: kindness, presence, effort, without measuring it against a hidden standard. This frees relationships from the heavy chains of judgment. Children especially benefit from this practice. Parents often impose expectations so heavy that children feel crushed beneath them. Grades, achievements, behavior, all become measures of worth. When a parent learns to meet their child with an empty bowl, the child feels truly seen. Growth arises naturally when nurtured in acceptance, not when squeezed into rigid molds. This habit also reshapes spiritual practice itself. Many approach meditation, prayer, or reflection with expectations. Calm must come, clarity must appear, peace must arrive. When these do not, frustration grows. But true practice is not about forcing states of mind. It is about arriving empty and receiving whatever comes. Some days bring stillness, some days restlessness. Both are part of the path when received openly. Even ordinary routines become richer through this habit. Drinking water, washing dishes, walking through a doorway, each can be approached with an empty bowl mind. Instead of rushing through, you allow the experience to fill you, as island water refreshes, dishes teach care, a doorway marks transition. Life stops feeling like a blur and becomes a series of full, unique moments. The empty bowl attitude also builds resilience against disappointment. When you expect little, you are rarely shaken. Life cannot take away what you were never clinging to. This does not mean you stop caring or trying. It means you stop tying your peace to fragile outcomes. You can work hard, love deeply, strive honestly, and still remain steady when things do not unfold as planned. That steadiness is the strength of emptiness. Gratitude naturally deepens in this practice. When the bowl is empty, anything it receives feels like a blessing. Small joys, sunlight through a window, the sound of laughter, a meal shared become treasures. Gratitude is not forced. It arises from the recognition that nothing is guaranteed, yet much is given. Life feels abundant not because you have more, but because you cling less. To carry an empty bowl is to live without entitlement. You stop demanding from life and start receiving from life. The difference is subtle but transformative. Demanding creates tension, receiving creates peace. The world itself does not change, but the way you meet it does, and that shift changes everything. This practice does not erase ambition or goals, it reshapes them. You can still work toward dreams, but without enslaving yourself to their outcomes. You can still hold standards, but without condemning yourself or others when they are not met. The bowl remains open, always ready to receive what comes, always free to let go of what passes. Over time, this habit becomes second nature. You enter rooms, conversations, and tasks with openness rather than judgment. Others sense it and respond with greater ease. Tension dissolves. Life feels less like a battle to control and more like a gift to participate in. The ego, once loud, grows quiet, and peace takes its place. An empty bowl attitude is not about emptiness, as lack it is about emptiness as freedom. Free from clinging, free from rigid control, free to meet life fully. With this practice, even ordinary days feel sacred, because every moment is received as it is, not as you demanded it to be. This openness is strength, not weakness, and it becomes the ground on which lasting peace is built. When life is met with an empty bowl attitude, the mind feels lighter, yet even openness can become strained if we rush endlessly from one task to another. The world pulls us forward with constant demands, messages to answer, chores to complete, problems to solve. We often arrive at the end of the day drained, not because any single task was too heavy, but because we carried the weight of one into the next without pause. Peace slips away not in grand losses, but in these small, unnoticed leaks of energy. To repair this, the practice of micro-meditations becomes essential. Short pauses, no longer than 3 breaths, placed like doorways between activities. A pause may seem too small to matter, yet its effect is profound. 3 breaths create a clear line between what has ended and what is beginning. Without it, tasks bleed into each other, and the mind remains restless, never fully releasing. With it, the past activity is set down before the next is lifted. These pauses cleanse the mind of residue, much like washing hands before touching new food. They prevent the restless accumulation that makes life feel overwhelming. The simplicity of 3 breaths hides their depth. The first breath anchors you, reminding you that you are here. The second breath releases tension, loosening the grip of the task just completed. The third breath opens space for what is to come, uncluttered by leftover thoughts. This rhythm, repeated throughout the day, creates countless small resets that protect peace without requiring long retreats or special conditions. Practicing micro-meditations also strengthens awareness of transitions. Most of life happens not in grand moments, but in these quiet shifts. Leaving a desk to walk into the kitchen, closing one conversation to begin another, setting down a book before picking up a phone. Without awareness, these transitions pass unnoticed, and restlessness accumulates. By pausing, you turn each transition into practice. The doorway between tasks becomes as valuable as the tasks themselves. This habit also reshapes time. Without pauses, days feel like a blur, one task rushing into the next until hours vanish. With pauses, each activity stands distinct. The day feels longer, not in burden but in fullness, because each part of it is clearly marked and consciously entered. Time slows down, not because the clock changes, but because awareness deepens. Micro-meditations also protect relationships. Often, irritation from one situation spills into the next. Frustration at work is carried into a conversation with family. Distraction from a phone call bleeds into dinner. By pausing with 3 breaths, you clear the residue before stepping into the next moment. You meet others without the leftover weight of what came before. This creates more presence, more patience, more genuine attention. The nervous system benefits greatly from these small pauses. Constant motion keeps it locked in alertness. Short breaks of breathing allow it to reset, activating calm rather than constant stress. These repeated resets throughout the day prevent exhaustion, making energy steadier and clearer. By the evening, you feel less drained, not because you did less, but because you carried less tension forward. The practice is also a teacher of letting go. Each pause asks you to release what has just been done, no matter how incomplete or imperfect it may feel. This release is not laziness but discipline. It trains the mind not to cling. You begin to see that most tasks do not require endless rethinking. Once finished, they require closure. The 3-breath pause becomes this closure, allowing you to step forward without dragging the past behind. At first, the habit may feel unnatural. The mind resists stopping, insisting that speed is efficiency. But with practice, you see the opposite is true. Pausing does not waste time. It sharpens focus for the next task. The minutes you lose in breathing are regained in clarity and efficiency, as you are less likely to make mistakes or lose energy through distraction. Over time, micro-meditations become automatic. You close your laptop and naturally take 3 breaths before standing. You finish a phone call and pause before opening a message. You place one object down and breathe before lifting another. The pauses no longer feel like interruptions. They become natural rhythms woven into the fabric of daily life. This habit also deepens gratitude. The pause gives space to notice what has just been completed, however small. A finished email, a washed dish, a closed door, all become moments to acknowledge with a breath of appreciation. Gratitude grows not only for large achievements, but for these small, ordinary completions that shape the day. The effect on the mind is cumulative. One pause may feel small, but dozens scattered throughout the day create a profound shift. Instead of carrying a mountain of mental clutter into the night, you carry only what belongs to each moment. Sleep deepens, not because problems vanish, but because you have trained yourself to release them rather than pile them endlessly. Micro-meditations also serve as anchors in chaos. When the day becomes overwhelming, the habit of pausing gives you a tool always available. You may not have time for long practice, but you always have time for 3 breaths. These small acts prevent panic from taking over. They remind you that calm is always one pause away, even in the busiest moments. The practice also teaches humility. To stop, even briefly, is to admit you are not in complete control, that rushing cannot fix everything. It is a bow to reality, acknowledging that presence matters more than speed. This humility softens the ego's demand to dominate every second and allows peace to flow back into the day. Even creativity is nourished by pauses. When you step briefly away from constant doing, the mind has space to make new connections. Many insights arise not during action, but during the quiet gaps between actions. By scattering these gaps throughout your day, you invite creativity to enter naturally, without forcing it. Micro-meditations are not about escape, but about presence. They do not remove you from life, they return you to it. By pausing, you step fully into what is here, instead of rushing past it. This practice does not add new burdens, it lightens existing ones. It is not another task to complete, but a way of entering tasks with less weight. As the empty bowl teaches openness, micro-meditations teach rhythm. Together, they dissolve restlessness and bring steadiness. Each pause becomes a reminder that peace is not far away, not hidden in special places, but accessible in the space of 3 breaths. Through this habit, life regains balance, and even the busiest day holds moments of deep stillness. Short pauses between tasks teach us to carry less, to reset before moving on. Yet even with this practice, suffering can still grow when we add weight that does not belong. Pain by itself is often sharp but brief. What keeps it alive is the mind's habit of striking again, of turning one wound into 2, one arrow into many. The first arrow may be unavoidable, the hurt, the mistake, the loss, but the second arrow is one we fire at ourselves. Learning to release this habit is one of the most freeing disciplines in daily life. The second arrow takes many forms. A criticism from someone else is the first arrow, but the replay in your head, telling yourself you are worthless, is the second. Physical pain is the first arrow, but the story that life is unfair or that you are cursed is the second. Disappointment is the first arrow, but resentment that you deserved better is the second. This habit is so deeply ingrained that most people believe it is natural, yet it is only conditioning something that can be unlearned. The first step is awareness. You cannot release what you do not notice. By paying attention, you begin to catch the moment when pain arrives and the mind rushes to add commentary. The sting of the first arrow is sharp, but the second arrow is subtle, slipping in through judgment, blame, or endless analysis. Awareness breaks the cycle. Even a small pause, a recognition of "this is the second arrow," is enough to weaken its power. Releasing the second arrow does not mean denying pain. It means meeting pain without multiplying it. When a friend cancels plans, you may feel sadness. That sadness is natural. But if you add the thought, "I must be unimportant, no one values me," you have doubled the suffering. By staying with the raw feeling, just sadness, you allow it to rise and fall like a wave. It passes more quickly when not bound by stories. This practice builds resilience because it shifts focus from controlling the world to controlling the mind's reaction. You may not stop every insult, accident, or loss, but you can stop feeding them with extra arrows. Each time you succeed, you prove to yourself that suffering can be reduced, not by changing circumstances, but by changing habits. This realization is empowering. It returns peace to your own hands. The second arrow habit often grows strongest in self-criticism. Many people strike themselves harder than anyone else ever could. A small mistake becomes proof of failure. A missed opportunity becomes a lifelong regret. By noticing this pattern, you begin to see how unfairly you treat yourself. Releasing the second arrow means offering yourself the same compassion you would give to a friend. You would not tell a friend, "You are worthless because you made an error." Why tell yourself? Each time you resist self-attack, you soften the habit of cruelty within. The practice also heals relationships. Often anger toward others is not from the first arrow, but from the second. Someone speaks harshly, and instead of letting the pain pass, you build resentment, replaying their words, imagining their intentions. This multiplies suffering and poisons the connection. By refusing to fire the second arrow, you reduce anger's grip. You may still address the behavior, but without dragging resentment into it. This allows for clearer communication and less lasting harm. Letting go of the second arrow also trains patience. Pain demands immediate reaction. The second arrow comes when you respond too quickly. By waiting, even a few breaths, you give space for the urge to attack to fade. In that space, perspective grows. The mind that wanted revenge a moment ago may now see the situation differently. Pausing turns reaction into choice. The body, too, benefits from this practice. Stress hormones surge when the second arrow is fired, keeping the body tense and the heart racing long after the first pain has ended. By stopping this habit, the nervous system calms more quickly. Physical recovery improves when the body is not burdened by emotional reactivity. Many chronic tensions are not from the first arrows of life, but from the second arrows we shoot daily without noticing. This habit also affects time. The first arrow is momentary. The second arrow stretches pain across hours, days, even years. People carry grudges for decades, not because the first wound lasted, but because the second arrow was never dropped. To release it is to free yourself from being chained to the past. Life becomes lighter because each moment is lived fresh rather than soaked in old resentment. Releasing the second arrow requires compassion. Without compassion, the mind feels justified in striking again. Compassion sees the first pain as enough, already difficult, already heavy. It refuses to add more. Compassion is not weakness. It is wisdom that understands multiplying pain does not heal it. The more compassion grows, the less energy the second arrow receives. Training begins in small situations. A delayed train, a spilled drink, a sharp word. Catch the second arrow early. Do not add, "This always happens to me," or "I'm such a fool." Just breathe. Feel the irritation. Let it pass. Small victories in daily life prepare you for larger pains. Over time, the mind learns that peace is preserved not by control of the world, but by restraint of the second arrow. The practice also deepens gratitude. When pain arises without being multiplied, you notice how quickly it passes. You see that most suffering is temporary, that peace returns naturally when not blocked. Gratitude grows for the ability to return to calm, for the freedom that comes from not attacking yourself or others. This gratitude itself becomes protection against future arrows. Letting go of the second arrow is not easy. The habit is old, reinforced by culture, family, and personal history. But each time you succeed, even briefly, you weaken its roots. You build a mind that is less reactive, less cruel, more balanced. Slowly, the habit of shooting arrows fades, replaced by the habit of letting pain be only what it island. This practice reveals a deeper truth. Suffering is not only what happens to us, but also what we add afterward. By dropping the second arrow, you discover that much of life's pain is optional. What remains is bearable, even meaningful, because it is not wrapped in layers of resentment. Life becomes simpler, less heavy, more peaceful. To stop firing the second arrow is to reclaim strength. It is to refuse unnecessary suffering, to meet life with clarity rather than distortion. Pain will still come, but peace will return more quickly, because you no longer feed the fire. This is not escape, it is wisdom, a discipline that turns every hurt into practice. With time, the habit of striking yourself or others fades, and the habit of peace takes its place. Releasing the second arrow teaches that peace comes not from avoiding pain but from refusing to deepen it. Yet even with this discipline, the body itself can betray the mind. When posture collapses, breath shortens, and shoulders cave in, the spirit follows, and dignity feels distant. The body is not separate from the mind, it is its vessel and mirror. To find refuge in posture is to claim a place of strength within yourself, a position that silently communicates resilience and calm, not as performance, but as alignment with your own worth. Sitting or standing upright is not about stiffness or forced control. It is a way of honoring the life that flows through you. The spine rises like a tree trunk, steady and rooted, while the chest opens as if to welcome the world. This position allows the breath to flow freely, the heart to expand, the mind to settle. When practiced daily, posture becomes less about appearance and more about an inner reminder. You carry dignity, no matter the circumstance. Poor posture often signals defeat to the body. Slumped shoulders, bent neck, and compressed lungs tell the nervous system that something is wrong, even when nothing has happened. This creates a cycle where body and mind reinforce each other in heaviness. Correcting posture interrupts that cycle. When the body straightens, breath deepens, energy rises, and the mind feels clearer. It is not magic, it is physiology. The body informs the brain, and the brain informs the body, in a continuous loop. Finding refuge in posture also shapes how you meet the world. Others sense the way you hold yourself before you speak a word. Upright posture radiates presence without aggression, confidence without arrogance. It invites respect without demanding it. This is not about impressing others, but about carrying yourself in a way that reflects your inner steadiness. The world often responds differently to someone who stands grounded, and this in turn reinforces your own calm. Daily practice of posture builds awareness of subtle tensions. Most people are unaware of how often they hunch, tighten the jaw, or lean unconsciously. By training attention to posture, you notice these habits and release them. Each release is a micro-meditation, a return to dignity through the body. Over time, the body learns to settle naturally into alignment, reducing strain and conserving energy. Breath and posture are inseparable. Upright posture opens the lungs fully, allowing oxygen to flow and the nervous system to stabilize. Shallow breath, born of slouching, keeps the body in mild stress. Deep breath, supported by posture, calms the system and sharpens focus. This connection reveals that caring for posture is not vanity, it is a foundation for mental clarity and physical health. Posture also teaches presence. To sit upright in a chair without slumping, to stand tall in a line without distraction, requires awareness. The body resists falling into unconscious habits, and that resistance strengthens mindfulness. Posture becomes both a practice and a symbol. You are awake, here, engaged with life. Finding refuge in posture is especially valuable during difficulty. When sadness presses down, when anxiety shrinks the chest, when fear tightens the body, choosing to rise upright interrupts the spiral. It does not erase emotion, but it reminds you that dignity remains intact, even in struggle. The body holds space for strength when the mind forgets it. This practice does not require long hours of meditation. It can be woven into ordinary life. Each time you sit at a desk, pause to straighten. Each time you stand from a chair, notice the balance of your weight. Each time you walk, let the spine rise freely. These small acts accumulate into a habit of dignity. In spiritual traditions, posture has always been honored. Monks sit upright not for discipline alone, but to reflect alignment with the inner self. Warriors stand tall not only for readiness but for presence. The body is seen as a temple, and posture as its offering. When you adopt this habit, you join a lineage of countless practitioners who understood that peace is carried not only in the mind, but in the form you inhabit. Posture also influences thought. Studies show that upright posture increases confidence, improves memory, and reduces stress. The body's shape literally alters the brain's chemistry and patterns. By claiming uprightness, you train the mind to mirror strength. The act of standing tall becomes a daily affirmation, wordless yet powerful. Children benefit deeply when taught this practice. Upright posture helps them focus in school, breathe fully, and carry self-respect. Adults who model it teach without words, showing that dignity is not about possessions or status, but about how you hold yourself in every moment. Finding refuge in posture also nurtures humility. Uprightness is not puffed-up pride. It is balanced, open, receptive. The chest is lifted, but not to dominate. The back is straight, but not rigid. It is the middle way between collapse and arrogance, a stance that honors both strength and gentleness. Over time, posture becomes more than physical alignment. It becomes a refuge in difficult times, a home you can return to anywhere. When life feels uncertain, the simple act of sitting or standing tall grounds you. It says without words, "I am here, I am steady, I can meet this moment." This habit integrates easily with other practices. Silence feels deeper when the body rests in dignity. Walking meditation feels steadier when the spine is aligned. Even bowing inwardly gains depth when performed from an upright stance. Posture connects all practices, weaving them into a whole. To find refuge in posture is to discover that peace is not hidden in distant places. It is here, in the way you hold your body, in the way you carry yourself through ordinary days. With each upright breath, you return to dignity. With each upright step, you radiate peace. This is not effort, it is remembrance. You are built to stand tall, and in standing tall, you remember who you are. When posture becomes a refuge, the body itself reminds you of inner dignity, and strength radiates quietly without words. Yet true strength is not only in how you carry yourself, but also in how you carry others in your heart. Dignity is incomplete without compassion, and peace is shallow if it ends at the edge of what is familiar. To walk this path more deeply, you extend kindness beyond those you know, reaching into the wide circle of strangers who share this world with you. Practicing loving kindness for strangers is not dramatic. It requires no public display, no grand gestures. It is as simple as pausing for 1 minute and silently wishing wellness for someone you do not know. A face in the crowd, a voice on the radio, a name you read but will never meet. In that moment, you train the heart to expand beyond habit. Instead of saving compassion for family or friends, you allow it to flow freely, without ownership, without boundaries. This practice dismantles the illusion of separation. Most of the suffering in the world comes from the belief that others are different, distant, unrelated to us, but each stranger carries the same fragile hopes and hidden struggles. The mother rushing to work, the child playing on the sidewalk, the old man waiting for the bus, all breathe, all age, all fear, all dream. By silently wishing them well, you bridge the invisible gap that keeps hearts closed. The act may seem small, yet its effect is vast. A minute of silent goodwill softens the mind, loosens judgment, and creates a subtle warmth that lingers. The stranger never knows, but you feel the change. Harsh thoughts fade, resentment weakens, and gratitude grows. The heart trained in this way is less likely to harden in daily life. This habit also heals the loneliness that many carry. By sending kindness outward, you remind yourself that you are part of a larger web of life. Compassion does not require personal connection to be real. Even without words exchanged, you participate in humanity's shared breath. This sense of belonging brings comfort, especially in moments when you feel isolated. The practice builds patience. Strangers often trigger irritation. Someone cuts in traffic, slows a line, speaks too loudly. Normally, the mind leaps to judgment. But when you train yourself to wish wellness for strangers, even these moments transform. The driver becomes a fellow human with unseen burdens. The slow line becomes an opportunity to extend goodwill. The loud voice becomes a reminder of shared imperfection. Irritation lessens, replaced by quiet empathy. There is also humility in this practice. To wish wellness for strangers is to admit you do not know their stories, yet you honor them anyway. You release the need to judge worthiness. Kindness is offered not because someone earned it, but because kindness itself is your chosen response. This humility strengthens the habit of compassion until it flows naturally, without calculation. A single minute daily is enough to begin reshaping the mind. The choice of stranger does not matter. It may be the first person you see in the morning, a passerby during a walk, or even someone whose face you recall from memory. What matters is sincerity. Even a brief, genuine wish, "May you be safe, may you be free from suffering," plants a seed. Over time, these seeds accumulate, and the heart becomes a field of compassion. The benefits extend inward as well. Studies have shown that practicing loving-kindness meditation increases positive emotions, reduces stress, and improves resilience. But beyond science, the lived experience is simple. The heart feels lighter. Anger dissolves more easily. Forgiveness arises more quickly, and joy grows less dependent on circumstances. Compassion for strangers becomes compassion for yourself, because you cannot open the heart outward without also softening it inward. This practice can also prevent despair. In a world often filled with conflict, injustice, and cruelty, it is easy to feel powerless. But wishing wellness for strangers is a reminder that compassion is still within your reach. You may not fix every problem, but you can refuse to add to the hardness. Each silent wish becomes a quiet act of resistance against cynicism. The habit strengthens gratitude too. When you wish wellness for someone carrying visible burdens, you become more aware of the blessings in your own life. When you see someone enjoying a moment of happiness, your heart learns to celebrate with them instead of comparing. Compassion for strangers transforms envy into joy and judgment into understanding. In families, this practice expands perspective. Parents who silently send goodwill to other children develop deeper patience with their own. Partners who extend compassion to strangers learn to treat each other with more gentleness. The ripple is subtle but powerful. What begins as an inward habit reshapes outward relationships. Over time, you begin to notice strangers differently. Instead of faces in a blur, they appear as unique lives, each valuable. The world becomes less hostile, less cold. Even in crowded streets or busy airports, you feel surrounded not by obstacles, but by fellow travelers on the same uncertain road. This shift alone changes how you move through life. Compassion for strangers also strengthens courage. When kindness flows beyond what is familiar, fear of others weakens. The unknown no longer feels threatening. You meet difference with openness rather than suspicion. This courage is quiet but steady. It allows you to step into diverse spaces without shrinking, because the heart has already practiced meeting strangers with goodwill. The practice does not require perfect mood or ideal setting. Even on days when you feel tired or discouraged, the act of sending a simple wish outward can soften your own heaviness. Sometimes the compassion you offer becomes the compassion you need. This reciprocity is not forced. It arises naturally when the heart learns to open. Finding 1 minute daily may seem insignificant, but over weeks and months, the effect accumulates. Compassion becomes less of a choice and more of a reflex. Judgment still arises, but it passes more quickly. Irritation still sparks, but it is cooled by empathy. You begin to live in a field of goodwill that touches every encounter, known or unknown. Practicing loving kindness for strangers is one of the simplest yet most profound habits. It requires no special tools, no external approval, no recognition. Yet it changes how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you see the world. By dedicating even a minute a day to silently wishing wellness for those beyond your circle, you expand the heart until compassion becomes limitless. And when compassion becomes limitless, peace is no longer fragile, it is unshakable. Extending kindness to strangers opens the heart beyond the limits of what is familiar. But even as compassion grows, daily life still tests us with constant interruptions, sounds that tug at our attention and stir irritation. Noise often feels like an enemy, yet sound itself is not the problem. It is the way the mind resists it, labeling it as disturbance, that causes unrest. When you shift perspective, every sound becomes a teacher. Instead of fighting noise, you can receive it as a bell of mindfulness, a reminder to return to the breath, to return to yourself. The world is filled with sound, and most of it arrives uninvited. Car horns cut through traffic, phones demand attention with sharp rings, doors slam, dogs bark, neighbors shout. These are usually seen as intrusions, pulling you out of peace. But if each sound is treated as a bell, then nothing interrupts. Practice, everything, deepens it. A bell calls you back, not away. With this shift, the very fabric of life becomes a field of mindfulness. Treating sounds as bells is powerful because it transforms the unavoidable into the useful. Silence is rare in modern life, and waiting for perfect quiet means practice will always be postponed. But sound is constant, which means reminders are constant. Every horn, every ring, every laugh or cry becomes a signal to pause and breathe. Instead of resenting noise, you learn to welcome it as support. This practice trains the mind to release reactivity. Normally, noise produces irritation. A loud horn creates anger, a phone ring creates anxiety, a neighbor's music creates resentment. But when sound becomes a bell, irritation weakens. The same horn, ring, or music now becomes a doorway to presence. The mind no longer reacts with aversion, but with return. Over time, the habit of irritation is replaced with the habit of mindfulness. Birdsong or natural sounds often feel easier to accept. They are gentle, rhythmic, and soothing. But the true training lies in the harsher sounds, the ones that usually provoke resistance. To turn a harsh sound into a bell is to reclaim freedom. No longer held hostage by the environment, you become steady in both harmony and chaos. The world continues its noise, but within you, peace grows unshaken. This practice also strengthens awareness of breath. Each sound becomes an invitation to inhale and exhale consciously. The bell rings, the breath returns, the mind rests. With repetition, breathing in this way becomes automatic. Even without effort, sounds begin to trigger presence. The environment itself becomes your meditation partner, guiding you back whenever you drift. The habit reshapes how you move through crowded or noisy spaces. Streets, offices, airports, restaurants, all filled with sound, become places of practice instead of stress. Where others feel agitation, you feel reminders. This shift not only protects your peace, but also radiates calm to those around you. Your steadiness becomes an anchor in environments where most are restless. In families, this practice prevents conflict from escalating. A loud voice, a slammed door, a crying child, normally these might spark quick reactions. But if treated as bells, they instead trigger mindful pauses. In that pause, the urge to react softens and patience arises. Many arguments dissolve before they begin, simply because sound was met with breath rather than anger. This habit also teaches acceptance. Sound is one of the clearest examples of impermanence. It arises, lingers, and fades on its own. By listening deeply, you learn to experience this rise and fall without clinging or resisting. This acceptance extends to other aspects of life. Just as sounds come and go, so do emotions, thoughts, and situations. The bell practice becomes training for living with impermanence. Over time, this approach creates a subtle joy. Sounds that once felt hostile become companions. A bird outside your window becomes a daily friend. A phone ring becomes a reminder to check your breath before answering. Even the hum of machines or the bustle of crowds becomes part of your meditation. The world no longer feels divided into peaceful and disturbing. It becomes whole, and you are at ease within it. This practice also sharpens listening. Most people hear selectively, tuning out what they dislike and craving what they enjoy. By treating every sound as a bell, you listen fully without preference. This deep listening creates openness and sensitivity. You hear layers you never noticed before, the silence beneath the noise, the subtle shifts in tone, the patterns of rhythm in ordinary sounds. Listening in this way deepens presence, not only with sound, but with people. Sound as a bell also supports compassion. When you hear someone shouting in anger, instead of reacting, you can breathe and silently wish them peace. Their sound becomes not an attack, but a signal for you to cultivate kindness. Even distressing sounds, sirens, cries, arguments, become opportunities to extend compassion to those in pain. Integrating this habit requires consistency. Begin by choosing a few sounds each day to treat as bells. A phone notification, the sound of traffic, the closing of a door. Each time they occur, pause for 1 or 2 breaths. As the habit strengthens, include more sounds until the practice becomes natural. Eventually, every sound is welcomed as a reminder. The effect on the nervous system is significant. Reactivity to noise is one of the common triggers of stress. By transforming noise into reminders, the stress response softens. Instead of tension, breath flows. Instead of anger, presence arises. This gradual rewiring turns the external environment from a source of agitation into a source of support. Over weeks and months, the mind itself grows quieter, even though the world remains noisy. You no longer need silence to feel calm, because calm is carried within. Sound no longer dictates your state of mind, you dictate how sound is received. This is true freedom. To remain peaceful not because the world is quiet, but because you are steady. Treating every sound as a bell of mindfulness reveals that life is always speaking to you, always calling you back. The horn, the ring, the birdsong are not interruptions, they are invitations. Each one asks the same question: will you return to the present, or will you resist? By choosing return again and again, you discover that peace is not elsewhere. It is here, carried on every wave of sound, waiting for you to listen. When every sound becomes a bell of mindfulness, the world itself feels like a teacher, calling you back to presence again and again. Yet presence deepens further when you bring the body into contact with the ground. Sounds guide the mind to awareness, but the earth grounds the whole being, reminding you where you belong. Touching the earth with your hands or forehead is more than a gesture, it is a ritual of humility, a daily act of surrender to the truth that you are part of something vast, something ancient, something that holds you long before you could hold yourself. To bow and touch the earth is to remember that life is not carried by your effort alone. Beneath you is soil that has held every ancestor, every tree, every river, every living being. The earth is silent, patient, and generous. When your skin meets its surface, the illusion of separateness dissolves. You are reminded that the same ground that holds the roots of trees also supports your bones. The same minerals that nourish plants circulate in your blood. The gesture is not symbolic alone, it is physical proof of belonging. This practice cultivates humility. The forehead, often held high in pride or tension, lowers in respect. The hands, often used to grasp and control, rest gently on the soil. These movements teach the body what the mind often forgets, that strength is not domination, but reverence. Humility here is not humiliation. It is the recognition that greatness is shared with all of life, that dignity grows when it bows. The act also restores balance in times of heaviness. When stress builds, when the mind spins with worry, grounding resets the system. Kneeling down, lowering the head, and touching the earth redirects scattered energy into the stability beneath you. The nervous system calms, the breath deepens, and the racing mind slows. This simple ritual works because it brings the body back to its source. Earth does not move with your worries, it remains steady, and in touching it, you borrow its steadiness. Touching the earth is also an act of gratitude. Every bite of food, every breath of air, every drop of water comes from it. Bowing daily becomes a way of saying thank you, not in words, but in action. Gratitude expressed through the body anchors more deeply than gratitude expressed in thought alone. The physical gesture leaves an imprint that thought often cannot hold. This ritual expands compassion as well. When you touch the earth, you recognize it as the same ground that carries not only you but also those you love and those you dislike, those who help and those who harm. All are supported equally. This awareness softens judgment and strengthens the sense of shared humanity. You realize that despite divisions, everyone walks on the same ground, everyone returns to it. Compassion grows naturally when this truth is embodied daily. In times of sorrow, the practice becomes a form of refuge. When grief feels unbearable, bowing to the ground offers release. Tears falling into the soil are carried, not wasted. The earth receives what you cannot hold, steady and patient. Many find that the act of touching the ground with the forehead is the only gesture strong enough to carry the weight of overwhelming loss. It reminds you that you are not alone, that even in despair you are supported. The ritual also trains awareness of impermanence. The earth you touch is not fixed. It changes constantly, turning seasons, shifting forms, breaking down and rebuilding life. By bowing to it daily, you train yourself to live in harmony with change rather than in resistance. The body itself is part of this same cycle, destined to return to soil. Instead of fearing this, touching the ground transforms it into acceptance. This practice can be done anywhere on bare soil, grass, sand, stone, even a wooden floor that once was tree. The key is intention. The body bows, the skin meets ground, and the mind remembers, I am not separate. This act is portable, requiring no temple, no ritual space. It can be done in the quiet of dawn, in the middle of stress, or before sleep. Children respond deeply to this practice. When taught to bow to the ground, they sense wonder and respect for the world they walk on. It teaches them to care for the earth, not as an idea, but as a living relationship. Adults, too, rediscover awe through this ritual, remembering what was once instinctive as children to crouch, to touch, to explore. The habit also reshapes the way you treat the environment. It is harder to exploit or neglect what you bow to daily. Touching the earth builds reverence, and reverence leads naturally to protection. You begin to notice waste, pollution, and harm differently. Care arises not from guilt, but from relationship. You protect the ground, not as a duty, but as an act of love. Practicing this habit daily also restores a sense of sacredness to ordinary life. In a modern world of speed and distraction, ritual grounds the spirit. To bow each day is to step briefly out of the rush and into reverence. This transforms the ordinary into sacred, reminding you that spirituality does not only live in words or thoughts, but in the way you meet the ground that carries you. Touching the earth can also be linked with breath. As the forehead lowers, inhale deeply. As the hands rest, exhale fully. This synchrony of breath and gesture creates a rhythm of surrender. Each breath becomes an offering, each exhale a release of tension into the soil. The earth absorbs what you let go, and you rise lighter, steadier, more at peace. The practice also nourishes courage. Bowing does not mean weakness. It requires strength to lower yourself willingly, to set aside ego and pride. Each time you bow, you affirm that humility is not defeat, but freedom. Courage grows from this freedom, because the one who bows to the earth fears no loss of dignity. Dignity is already secure in reverence. Over time, the ritual becomes a reminder that home is not only a building or a place, but the ground itself. Wherever you go, touching the earth reconnects you. In unfamiliar spaces, in stressful times, in moments of uncertainty, the ground remains the same support. Bowing reminds you that you carry home beneath your feet. When integrated with other practices, this habit creates harmony. Silence deepens when the body bows. Walking feels steadier when rooted in earth. Compassion for strangers grows when you recognize that all walk the same ground. The practice is not separate from the rest, it ties them together, rooting them in the most basic truth. You belong to the earth, and it belongs to you. Touching the earth with hands or forehead is not just ritual but medicine. It calms the restless mind, grounds the scattered body, and opens the closed heart. It is a daily act of humility, gratitude, and connection. With each bow, you remember your place not above, not separate, but within. And from that place, peace is no longer fragile. It is steady, held by the very ground you bow to. Touching the earth restores the body and heart to their place of belonging. Yet even with this grounding, the mind often clings to its endless lists, tasks to finish, problems to solve, futures to secure. The modern habit is to measure worth by productivity, to equate rest with laziness, and to confuse busyness with meaning. But there is another way. The habit of non-doing invites you to step out of the cycle, if only for a few minutes, and rest in being itself. No agenda, no fixing, no striving, just returning to the simple truth that peace is not something to earn, but something already present beneath the noise. Non-doing is not the same as distraction. It is not collapsing into a screen, drifting through chatter, or numbing yourself with entertainment. It is deliberate, conscious stillness. It is giving yourself permission to put everything down without replacing it with something else. In those few minutes, you are not defined by achievements or failures, not bound by roles or responsibilities. You are simply here, breathing, alive. That is enough. This practice reveals how much of our suffering comes from constant pushing. Even when the body stops, the mind keeps running, replaying the past, projecting the future, inventing endless problems to solve. Non-doing interrupts this cycle. It is like clearing a foggy window. Suddenly the view is simple again. The mind does not have to hold the whole world. It can rest. And in resting, it recovers clarity. At first, the habit feels uncomfortable. Sitting without a plan or lying down without intention can stir restlessness. The mind protests, "You're wasting time, you should be doing more." But that protest is precisely the illusion to dissolve. Productivity does not define worth. In stillness, you learn that your being carries value beyond output. Peace becomes possible, not because you added more effort, but because you stopped piling effort on top of effort. These moments of non-doing also nurture the body. Muscles soften, breath deepens, the nervous system shifts from survival mode into recovery. Even a few minutes allow the body to repair what constant stress erodes. Many health problems grow not from single moments of strain, but from the absence of pause. By resting in non-doing, you give the body what it rarely receives: unconditional rest without demand. In relationships, the practice has subtle power. When you learn to rest in being, you no longer pressure others to constantly perform or meet your expectations. You begin to accept them as they are, because you have practiced accepting yourself as you are. Non-doing teaches that value does not depend on constant proving. This perspective softens judgment and strengthens compassion in every connection. This habit also dismantles the illusion that peace is a distant goal. Many believe they will find calm after finishing work, after solving problems, after achieving success. But the cycle never ends. New tasks and problems always appear. Non-doing reveals that peace is not at the end of striving, it is underneath it. By pausing, you uncover what was hidden all along. Over time, non-doing becomes a source of renewal. Just as sleep restores the body, conscious stillness restores the spirit. It is different from sleep because you remain awake, aware, and present. This awareness transforms rest into practice. The few minutes of non-doing during the day make every other hour more steady, more balanced, more alive. The practice also helps dissolve the fear of emptiness. Many avoid stillness because they fear what will arise when activity stops. But facing that silence shows it is not empty, it is full. Full of breath, full of life, full of presence. In non-doing, you discover that silence itself holds you, that you do not need constant distraction to feel alive. Practical integration is simple. You can sit upright, lie on the floor, or even pause during a walk. Close your eyes or keep them soft. Drop the need to accomplish, even the need to meditate correctly. Allow thoughts to come and go without following them. Return gently to breath or body when pulled away. 2 or 3 minutes are enough to begin. What matters is not length but sincerity. The mind gradually learns that it does not have to chase every thought. This is freedom. Instead of being dragged by every demand, you realize you can stop, breathe, and simply be. The more often you practice, the easier it becomes to rest in being, even in the middle of activity. Non-doing is not only for quiet spaces, it becomes a refuge carried within you. Non-doing also nurtures creativity. Many insights appear not during forced thinking, but during pauses when the mind relaxes. By stepping away from constant effort, the subconscious reveals connections and solutions that strain had hidden. Stillness gives space for newness to emerge. The habit of non-doing is not a waste of time, it is fertile ground for inspiration. This practice also teaches humility. By pausing, you admit that the world does not collapse if you stop for a moment. Life continues, and peace is not dependent on your constant control. This humility is liberating. It releases the illusion that you must hold everything together. In letting go, you discover that life carries you even when you are still. Over weeks and months, the habit reshapes identity. Instead of being someone defined only by doing, you become someone rooted in being. Your worth no longer rises and falls with productivity. You remain steady in success and failure alike, because beneath both lies the same ground of presence. That steadiness is unshakable, because it does not depend on conditions. A few minutes of non-doing daily are enough to change the whole rhythm of life. Stress loosens, clarity grows, relationships soften, gratitude deepens. You discover that rest is not indulgence but necessity, not weakness but strength. By resting deliberately, you uncover peace that was always waiting, hidden beneath the noise of endless striving. The habit of non-doing is one of the simplest yet most radical practices. It asks nothing but sincerity, no tools but attention, no time but a few minutes. Yet it dissolves illusions that years of striving could not touch. In this stillness you remember, you are not what you achieve, you are not what you fix, you are not what you prove. You are life itself, breathing, resting, being, and that is enough. When the body learns to rest in non-doing, peace reveals itself without effort. Yet stillness alone does not answer the mind's hunger for meaning. Life continually places before us puzzles that do not resolve neatly, contradictions, misunderstandings, moments that feel too strange to explain. The usual habit is to force closure, to label events quickly, to turn uncertainty into tidy conclusions. But there is another way, journaling in koan form. Instead of solving life's riddles, you record them and allow their paradox to work on you, stretching patience, loosening control, and opening space for deeper wisdom. A koan, in Zen tradition, is a question or statement that cannot be grasped by ordinary logic. It is not meant to be solved in the conventional sense, but to awaken a new way of seeing. When you journal in koan form, you turn daily life into this kind of practice. You write down an event exactly as it is, without judgment, without solution. Perhaps a friend spoke with warmth, but later withdrew coldly. Perhaps a task you worked hard on failed, while an effortless gesture brought success. Perhaps a stranger smiled at you in a way that lingered with no reason. Instead of explaining these moments, you capture them as they are, raw and unresolved. This habit trains you to accept not knowing. The mind craves certainty. It fears open-endedness. But life itself is rarely clear-cut. By writing puzzling events without forcing answers, you cultivate the strength to sit with ambiguity. Patience deepens because you learn that not every question needs immediate resolution. Openness grows because you stop narrowing reality to fit your expectations. Journaling in this way also frees you from the trap of constant interpretation. Much suffering arises not from events themselves, but from the stories we attach to them. A silence becomes rejection, a delay becomes failure, a contradiction becomes threat. When you journal in koan form, you resist these stories. You let the event stand naked, without decoration. This practice shows you how much peace comes from simply allowing life to be confusing without turning it into catastrophe. The act of writing itself anchors the process. Putting pen to paper slows the rush of thought. It creates space between the experience and your reaction. You see the event as an observer rather than being consumed by it. This distance is not detachment in the sense of coldness, it is clarity, the ability to notice without drowning. Koan journaling also trains humility. When you collect unsolved experiences, you admit you do not know everything, and that is acceptable. This humility softens arrogance and deepens connection. You realize others, too, are navigating contradictions they cannot resolve. Compassion arises naturally when you stop pretending life must always make sense. This practice also nourishes creativity. Paradox invites the mind to stretch beyond its usual patterns. When you hold unresolved questions without forcing answers, new insights often appear unexpectedly. They do not come from effort, but from the mind's deeper layers, which work quietly when given space. What felt like confusion may one day reveal wisdom, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it to ripen. Writing koans from daily life can be simple. Each evening, recall one moment that confused you, unsettled you, or defied easy explanation. Write it down as clearly and briefly as possible. Do not add commentary or analysis. Let it remain raw. Over time, your journal becomes a collection of living questions. Reading them later, you may find some still unresolved, others quietly transformed. The point is not resolution but relationship. You learn to walk with questions as companions rather than enemies. This habit also trains resilience in the face of uncertainty. Modern life often demands answers at work, in relationships, in self-understanding. Not knowing is seen as weakness. But journaling in koan form reframes not knowing as strength. It teaches that uncertainty is fertile ground, not a void. When life surprises you, instead of panicking, you recognize the familiar territory of paradox. You are already practiced in holding contradictions without collapse. Koan journaling also changes the way you remember your life. Instead of keeping a record of only clear achievements and failures, you preserve the mystery. Your personal story becomes less about linear progress and more about depth. This creates a richer relationship with your own past. You see it not as a straight line, but as a tapestry woven of clarity and confusion, both meaningful. The practice deepens spiritual understanding as well. Many traditions teach that truth cannot always be grasped directly. It must be approached through paradox, through surrender of ordinary logic. Journaling in koan form becomes a way of embodying this teaching daily. Each entry is a reminder that wisdom is not about mastering answers, but about living with questions. The emotional benefits are profound. Anxiety often arises from the demand to control outcomes and explain everything. By deliberately recording unresolved moments, you train the nervous system to relax in uncertainty. Fear of the unknown weakens. Instead of restlessness, curiosity grows. Instead of dread, you meet paradox with openness. In relationships, this practice reduces conflict. Much of human tension comes from trying to force others into clarity, demanding explanations, insisting on consistency. But koan journaling teaches you that contradictions can coexist without destroying connection. You become more patient with others' complexity, less insistent on tidy answers. This patience itself strengthens bonds. Over time, the journal becomes a mirror of growth. Early entries may be filled with irritation or confusion. Later ones carry more space, more acceptance. You begin to see that paradox itself is not a flaw but a feature of reality. The practice does not eliminate life's mysteries, it transforms your relationship with them. This habit also cultivates joy. When you stop demanding that life always makes sense, you discover beauty in its unpredictability. The odd glance, the chance encounter, the surprising twist, these become sources of wonder rather than frustration. Journaling in koan form preserves this wonder, reminding you that life is richer when not confined to rigid explanations. Practiced daily, even briefly, this habit reshapes the inner landscape. The mind softens, patience deepens, curiosity grows, humility flourishes. Life stops feeling like a puzzle to be solved and starts feeling like a mystery to be lived. And in that shift, peace arises naturally not from answers, but from openness. Koan journaling is not about clever writing, it is about honesty. A raw event, recorded simply, without judgment, is enough. Over months and years, this practice builds a library of living paradoxes. each one a teacher in its own way. Together, they form a record not of solved problems, but of deepened wisdom. To write one puzzling event daily without solving it is to bow to life's complexity. It is to say, I do not need to control every outcome. I do not need to explain every contradiction. I can live in mystery and still be whole. This truth, lived daily, dissolves restlessness and reveals a peace beyond logic. And from that peace, patience and openness flow into every part of life. Holding paradoxes in your journal without rushing to solve them teaches the heart patience and openness. Yet there is another challenge. The mind often resists finding joy not only in your own blessings, but in the success of others. Where there should be warmth, envy sometimes creeps in. Where there could be celebration, comparison steals the moment. To free the heart from this heaviness, you practice mudita, the deliberate habit of rejoicing in the happiness of others. Each time you do, envy weakens, and a deeper strength of heart grows in its place. Rejoicing in another's joy begins with recognition. Most of the time, we glance at others' success through the lens of ourselves. What we lack, what we wish we had, what we feel denied. This comparison poisons the heart, making another's fortune feel like our misfortune. But when you pause and consciously shift perspective, you see their joy as a gift to the world, not a theft from you. Their laughter does not diminish yours. Their achievement does not erase your path. By acknowledging this, you free yourself from the prison of competition. This practice nurtures generosity of spirit. To wish well for someone who already thrives requires setting aside the ego's craving to be first, to be superior. When you consciously rejoice, you stretch the heart beyond self-centeredness. It is a training in abundance, the recognition that happiness is not scarce. The joy of others is not your loss but your gain, because joy multiplies when shared. The habit also transforms relationships. Friends feel safer when they know their victories will be met, not with hidden resentment, but with genuine celebration. Trust deepens because there is no silent rivalry beneath the surface. Families strengthen when siblings and partners learn to honor each other's successes without jealousy. Even strangers become easier to love when you train the heart to celebrate their fortune. Mudita also heals inner wounds. Envy corrodes from within, leaving bitterness and dissatisfaction. But each time you practice rejoicing, you dissolve some of this poison. The heart feels lighter, the mind clearer. Instead of resenting what you do not have, you participate in the happiness that already exists around you. Life feels fuller, not because you gained more, but because you learned to share in what is already present. This practice builds resilience against the culture of comparison. Social media and constant exposure to curated lives tempt the mind to measure itself against endless standards. Without discipline, envy grows naturally in such an environment. But mudita provides an antidote. When you see a photo of someone's success, you deliberately pause and rejoice for them. You say inwardly, "May their happiness continue." This small act interrupts comparison and protects the heart from envy's grip. The practice can be strengthened with daily reflection. At the end of the day, recall one moment when you saw someone else's joy. It might have been small, a child laughing, a colleague receiving recognition, a stranger enjoying a meal. Instead of moving past it, dwell on it. Write it down or silently give thanks for it. In this way, you train the mind to notice joy not only in yourself, but everywhere. Mudita also supports humility. To rejoice in another's happiness means you are willing to accept that the spotlight need not always fall on you. You learn to step aside gracefully and allow others to shine. This humility is not weakness but wisdom. It shows that your worth is not diminished by another's success, and that true strength is found in generosity of heart. There is also a deep connection between mudita and gratitude. When you celebrate the blessings of others, you naturally become more aware of your own. The mind shifts from scarcity to abundance, from lack to fullness. Gratitude grows not by hoarding, but by sharing. You find yourself more content, less restless, because you see happiness everywhere, not just within. Practicing joy in others' joy also nourishes compassion. You begin to see that everyone deserves happiness, that every moment of joy is precious in a world so often filled with suffering. By celebrating others, you affirm this truth. Compassion and mudita strengthen each other. Compassion softens when others suffer. Mudita uplifts when others thrive. Together, they balance the heart, preventing it from sinking too deeply into sorrow or soaring too high into pride. This habit even reshapes ambition. Instead of striving to outshine others, you strive to grow together. Success becomes less about competition and more about contribution. You measure progress not by being better than others, but by becoming better at supporting and celebrating them. Ambition shifts from self-centered achievement to shared flourishing. The habit can be practiced anywhere, at any time. Waiting in a line, you might see someone ahead receive good news and silently rejoice for them. Walking down a street, you might notice a family enjoying laughter and let your heart share in it. These silent acts accumulate. Each time you rejoice, the heart expands, becoming more resilient, more generous, more alive. Mudita also protects against despair. In difficult times, your own joy may feel scarce, but by participating in the happiness of others, you still taste joy indirectly. This does not erase your pain, but it reminds you that joy continues to exist in the world. Borrowing strength from others' happiness gives you resilience until your own joy returns. Over months and years, this practice changes identity itself. You stop being someone who measures worth in comparison and become someone who delights in abundance. The heart grows strong, not by guarding against others' success, but by opening to it. The world feels less hostile, less competitive, because you no longer see others as rivals, but as sources of joy. Each day, even a single minute of mudita is enough to begin. The act is simple, but its effect is vast. With practice, envy weakens, bitterness fades, gratitude deepens, and compassion expands. Joy multiplies not by waiting for life to give you more, but by learning to rejoice in what is already given to others. To practice joy in others' joy is to free the heart from scarcity. It is to discover that peace and happiness grow not by holding, but by sharing. And when this becomes habit, the heart becomes strong enough to rejoice not only in your own blessings, but in the blessings of the whole world. That is true abundance. Rejoicing in the happiness of others softens the heart and teaches it to expand beyond comparison. Yet compassion and joy, though vast, still require grounding in the most ordinary acts of living. Nothing is more ordinary and yet more essential than drinking water. We reach for it without thought, rushing past the miracle it holds. To pause before sipping and see water, not only as personal relief, but as the sustenance of all life, is to turn a simple act into meditation. This habit transforms survival into reverence, routine into awareness, and each sip into a reminder of interconnectedness. Water is not merely liquid, it is continuity. It has cycled through clouds, rivers, soil, and veins for billions of years. The same molecules that quench your thirst may once have flowed through ancient forests, oceans, or even the bodies of ancestors. To drink with mindfulness is to recognize this continuity and to feel yourself not separate, but part of a living system that stretches far beyond the self. This awareness nurtures humility. You no longer see the glass of water as yours alone, but as a gift shared across time and space. The pause before drinking is crucial. Without it, the act remains mechanical, unnoticed. With it, you open a doorway into gratitude. In that moment, You can recall the rainfall that nourished reservoirs, the rivers that carried it, the unseen people who purified and delivered it. A sip becomes an encounter with countless lives and efforts. This is not abstraction, it is reality made visible by attention. Gratitude deepens not in thought alone, but in sensation, as the coolness touches your lips and flows through the body. This practice also teaches impermanence. Water never stays still, it moves, evaporates, transforms. By drinking with awareness, you embody this truth. What enters your body today will leave tomorrow, to return again in another form. The sip itself is a lesson in flow. Clinging to permanence dissolves when you see that even the water sustaining you cannot be held forever. This recognition softens the fear of change and helps you trust the rhythm of life. Drinking water as meditation strengthens presence. The mind often wanders during ordinary tasks, chasing worries or replaying memories. By focusing fully on the sip, you train the mind to rest in now. The temperature, the texture, the sensation of swallowing all become anchors to the present. Each sip becomes as sacred as a bell calling you back to yourself. Over time, this habit extends beyond water to other routines, turning the ordinary into continuous practice. This habit also reshapes the relationship with the body. Instead of treating thirst as annoyance, you meet it as communication. The body asks, and you respond with care. Drinking with awareness honors this relationship, reminding you that the body is not an obstacle to peace, but its vessel. By respecting it through mindful nourishment, you align inner and outer life. The practice naturally leads to compassion. As you pause before drinking, you may recall that countless beings struggle for the same water. In many places, access is scarce, and people walk miles for a fraction of what you take for granted. This awareness is not meant to burden, but to awaken generosity. Gratitude for what you have can inspire care for those who lack, creating a bridge between mindfulness and action. Water meditation also connects you to the natural world. When you sip slowly, you taste the rain, the rivers, the oceans condensed into clouds. You remember that every tree, every animal, every insect relies on this same substance. Life itself is woven through water. By drinking with reverence, you remind yourself that harming the earth is harming your own veins, because the cycle is one. This recognition fosters responsibility for the environment, not as theory but as lived experience. Over time, this practice transforms scarcity into abundance. You no longer need extravagant rituals to feel reverence, because the act of drinking water itself becomes sacred. Each sip carries richness when met with awareness. This abundance is not external but internal peace that grows from seeing life's gifts clearly. Practicing this habit daily is simple. Before each sip, pause for a breath. Inhale awareness of where the water has come from. Exhale gratitude for its presence. Then drink slowly, feeling it move through you. Even one mindful sip a day is enough to begin. The effect builds not from intensity, but from consistency. Each pause layers upon the last, training the mind to live with reverence. The nervous system benefits as well. Pausing before drinking interrupts the rush of the day. The act of slow sipping calms the body, deepens breath, and restores balance. Instead of gulping water unconsciously, you transform it into a rhythm of stillness. This small practice, repeated often, accumulates into resilience. The body learns to associate hydration not with rushing but with rest. This habit also nurtures joy. The simple sensation of water can bring delight when met with presence. The coolness, the freshness, the relief of thirst all become small but profound pleasures. Joy arises not from extraordinary experiences but from rediscovering the beauty of the ordinary. By drinking with awareness, you train yourself to see joy everywhere. In relationships, this practice radiates outward. When you cultivate gratitude for the simplest necessities, you become more patient with others. Irritation weakens because your perspective shifts from entitlement to appreciation. Conversations soften, conflicts ease, and compassion becomes easier to sustain. The inner peace built from mindful drinking flows into the way you treat people. The practice also protects against restlessness. When life feels overwhelming, pausing to drink water with awareness becomes a reset. It reminds you that survival is already supported, that in this moment you are sustained. This interrupts the spiral of anxiety and restores perspective. The act itself becomes a grounding ritual, like touching the earth with your lips instead of your hands. Over months and years, this habit deepens into wisdom. You begin to see that life is not separate from practice, it is practice. Every sip, every breath, every step becomes a chance to awaken. Water, the simplest of gifts, becomes your teacher, showing you gratitude, impermanence, presence, compassion, and joy. To drink water as meditation is to reclaim the sacredness of life hidden in plain sight. It is to remember that peace is uncovered not by adding more, but by meeting what already exists with awareness. Each sip says, "Life flows, life sustains, life connects us all." And when you live with this truth daily, reverence is no longer an occasional feeling, it becomes the way you move through the world. Sipping water with awareness teaches you that life's simplest acts can carry depth when met with reverence. But the same mind that can pause with gratitude often clutters itself again by nightfall. Thoughts pile up unfinished conversations, small regrets, lingering doubts, and endless lists of what still needs to be done. This accumulation weighs heavier than the tasks themselves, turning rest into struggle. To free the mind, you must learn to release deliberately. Letting go rituals at the end of each day offer this release, teaching the mind that it is safe to put burdens down and trust in rest. Mental clutter builds quietly. A single worry may feel light, but added to dozens of others, it becomes noise that never stops. The mind replays mistakes, invents scenarios, and resists stillness. Without release, sleep becomes shallow, focus weakens, and peace slips away. Letting go rituals interrupt this cycle by giving the mind a symbolic action to mark the transition from carrying to resting. Just as the body washes away dirt in water, the mind learns to wash away its residue. Visualization is one of the most effective tools. At the end of the day, sit quietly and bring to mind the worries you are holding. Picture them as tangible forms, stones, leaves, or written words. Then place them into an element, water, fire, wind, or earth. Watch them dissolve, burn, scatter, or bury. The mind responds to symbols as deeply as it responds to logic. When you see your burdens disappear in imagery, the nervous system begins to release its grip. Water rituals are gentle. You may visualize worries dissolving like ink into a stream, carried away until only clarity remains. This symbolizes flow, reminding you that life moves forward whether you cling or not. Fire rituals are stronger. You may picture your anxieties as paper burning to ash, consumed until nothing remains. This symbolizes transformation, showing you that what once felt heavy can become light. Both forms teach release, each suited to different temperaments. These rituals also strengthen boundaries between day and night. Many people carry work into sleep, conversations into dreams, stress into rest. By creating a nightly act of release, you mark a clear ending. The mind learns that once the ritual is done, the day is closed. This boundary preserves the quality of rest and allows you to wake with renewed clarity. The practice is not avoidance. You are not pretending challenges do not exist. You are teaching the mind to distinguish between what needs attention now and what can wait until tomorrow. This distinction is crucial. Without it, The mind believes it must carry everything at once, never allowing rest. With it, you learn that release is not abandonment, but wisdom, knowing when to hold and when to let go. Physical gestures can strengthen the ritual. Writing down worries on paper and then tearing or burning them provides a concrete act of release. Placing a stone in a bowl of water to represent a burden being set down, or blowing out a candle as a signal that the day's wait is finished, engages the body alongside the mind. These gestures deepen the impression, making the release more real. The habit also trains humility. Letting go means admitting you cannot control everything, that life is larger than your grip. This humility is liberating. It frees you from the exhausting demand to solve every problem before sleep. You learn to trust that rest itself is part of the solution. That clarity often comes not from holding tighter, but from stepping back. Over time, these rituals reduce chronic stress. The nervous system adapts to the pattern of nightly release. Muscles soften, breath deepens, and sleep grows more restorative. You wake clearer, less burdened by leftover tension. The cumulative effect is powerful not from one dramatic ritual, but from consistent small acts of letting go. This practice also reshapes your relationship with mistakes. Instead of replaying errors endlessly, you learn to acknowledge them, reflect, and then release. The ritual becomes a teacher of forgiveness, both for yourself and for others. Each night you let go, you affirm that clinging to resentment or regret does not heal it, only extends suffering. In relationships, this habit prevents unresolved frustrations from hardening overnight. By releasing before sleep, you reduce the chance of carrying bitterness into the next day. Conflicts are addressed with more clarity and less reactivity, because the mind is not clouded with accumulated resentment. This strengthens connection and builds trust. Letting go rituals also cultivate gratitude. When you release clutter, what remains is often a clearer view of blessings. The mind, freed from noise, notices small joys, the kindness of a word, the comfort of a meal, the warmth of a home. Gratitude arises naturally when space is created for it. These rituals do not have to be long. Even 5 minutes of visualization or symbolic gesture can shift the entire tone of rest. What matters is sincerity and consistency. By repeating the ritual each night, you train the mind in a new habit, releasing instead of clinging. Over weeks and months, this becomes second nature. The practice also teaches impermanence. Every worry you release reminds you that no thought is fixed, no emotion eternal. Just as water carries leaves away, life carries moments forward. This awareness reduces fear, because you no longer believe your current burden defines you forever. You learn that release is always possible. Letting go rituals are also acts of compassion toward yourself. They recognize that the human mind is not built to carry infinite weight. By giving yourself permission to set burdens down, you treat yourself with kindness. This compassion strengthens resilience, making you better able to face challenges when they truly need attention. Over the long term, this habit changes your relationship with control. You discover that peace does not come from solving everything, but from releasing what cannot be solved now. Control is no longer obsession, it becomes discernment. You hold what is useful, release what is not, and trust the rhythm of life to carry you. Reducing mental clutter through nightly letting go rituals is not just about sleep, it is about freedom. It is about teaching the mind that peace is always available when you stop carrying what does not belong to the present. Each ritual becomes a small death of worry and a small birth of calm. And over time, these small acts accumulate into a life where rest is deeper, clarity brighter, and peace more steady. Letting go rituals clear the clutter of the day, teaching the mind to rest without dragging yesterday into tomorrow. Yet, even as we release the weight of worries, there remains a deeper truth that must be faced if peace is to be unshakable. Everything we cling to, possessions, roles, even our own bodies, will one day be set down completely. Death is the most certain fact of life, yet it is the one we avoid thinking about. To contemplate death daily, not with dread but with clarity, sharpens gratitude, strengthens courage, and places small irritations back into perspective where they belong. Death contemplation does not mean dwelling in gloom. It is not about obsession with loss or cultivating fear. It is a simple pause, perhaps a minute each day, to remember that life is fragile and finite. This remembrance transforms the way you live. Suddenly, the minor inconveniences that once consumed energy, traffic delays, careless remarks, small disappointments lose their grip. They no longer matter as much in the face of the larger truth. Time is short, and what remains should be spent wisely. When you reflect on mortality, gratitude awakens naturally. The breath in your lungs, the ability to stand, the chance to see a sunrise, all become precious when you remember they are temporary. The habit of taking life for granted fades. You begin to see ordinary moments as extraordinary simply because they exist at all. Gratitude is no longer something you must force. It flows because the contrast of death makes every detail of life vivid. Courage also grows from this reflection. Fear of embarrassment, rejection, or failure feels heavy only when life is assumed to be endless. When you remember that death is certain, such fears shrink. You see that most risks are small in comparison, and many are worth taking because time is limited. This does not make you reckless. It makes you bold in living authentically. You choose honesty over pretense, love over hesitation, and action over endless delay. Daily contemplation also clarifies priorities. Many people waste energy chasing things they do not truly value: status, possessions, validation, because they forget life's brevity. Remembering death reorders values. Relationships matter more than reputation. Presence matters more than perfection. Kindness matters more than victory. You stop trading the irreplaceable for the trivial because perspective sharpens. This practice is deeply rooted in wisdom traditions. Monastics have long reflected on death not to depress themselves, but to awaken clarity. The awareness of impermanence is seen as the ground of compassion and wisdom. When you know life is fleeting, you naturally soften toward others, because they too are fragile. Anger loses fuel when you see that both you and the one you resent are mortal beings passing through the same brief span. Practical application is simple. You may take a quiet moment at dawn or before sleep. Close your eyes, breathe, and remind yourself, this life will end. Today could be the last. Then allow gratitude for the present moment to arise. Notice what feels lighter when seen against this truth. Notice what suddenly feels unworthy of your energy. The practice requires no ritual beyond sincerity. Even a single minute daily is enough to shift perception. Over time, fear of death itself softens. Much of death's terror comes from avoidance. By facing it gently each day, you remove the shock. Death becomes not an enemy but a teacher, reminding you of life's preciousness. You may still feel sadness at the thought of endings, but the paralyzing fear diminishes. In its place grows acceptance, and acceptance brings peace. This practice also strengthens forgiveness. Holding grudges seems absurd when seen against mortality. If life ends, why waste it on bitterness? Death contemplation reveals that reconciliation matters more than winning arguments. It encourages you to release old wounds, to speak kindness sooner, to mend bonds before it is too late. Relationships deepen through this awareness. When you remember that loved ones will not always be here, you listen more attentively, hug more tightly, and speak more gently. Small irritations lose their sharpness because they pale beside the truth that time together is fragile. The practice makes you present not only for your own life, but also for the lives of others. Daily reflection on death also prevents complacency. Many drift through life, waiting for the right time to live fully. But when you remind yourself that tomorrow is not promised, you act today. You start the project, express gratitude, take the walk, share the words you meant to say. Death contemplation becomes fuel for living, not an obstacle. The practice even reshapes your relationship with achievement. When you know life ends, success and failure both take on new meaning. Neither defines you permanently, and neither is carried beyond the grave. This frees you to pursue goals with passion, but without attachment, to enjoy accomplishments without clinging, and to endure setbacks without despair. Health benefits follow as well. Reflecting on death daily can reduce anxiety and increase resilience. It grounds the nervous system by breaking cycles of rumination about trivial issues. When the mind sees clearly what truly matters, it releases minor tensions more easily. The body relaxes when the mind is not trapped in constant exaggeration of small problems. This habit does not require intensity. You do not need to meditate on graveyards or envision graphic details. A gentle acknowledgement suffices. Life is finite, and because of that, this moment is precious. Done consistently, this acknowledgement builds an undercurrent of wisdom that supports every action. Over months and years, the practice transforms identity. You become someone who lives with urgency, but without panic, with depth, but without despair. Gratitude colors your days, courage fuels your choices, and compassion softens your relationships. Death, once a shadow to avoid, becomes a lantern guiding you toward authentic living. To spend 1 minute each day contemplating death without fear is to sharpen vision, to strip away illusions, and to awaken to the value of now. It teaches that peace is not the absence of endings, but the acceptance of them. And when you live this truth daily, every breath becomes a gift, every connection becomes sacred, and every irritation becomes too small to steal your joy. Reflecting daily on death reveals how fragile and precious life truly is, stripping away what does not matter and sharpening focus on what does. But even with this clarity, life continues to confront you with countless interactions, some uplifting, some frustrating, some deeply challenging. If death teaches urgency, then relationships teach depth. The next step on this path is learning to see every person you meet, whether kind or difficult, as a teacher. This habit turns life itself into a school where lessons are constant, disguised in ordinary encounters. Seeing teachers everywhere requires a shift in perception. Most people move through the day categorizing others: friend, foe, helpful, annoying, important, irrelevant. These labels block learning. But when you begin to view each person as someone carrying a lesson, even the frustrating ones, life becomes richer. A stranger's impatience may teach you patience. A loved one's kindness may teach you love. Someone's harshness may teach you boundaries. Instead of resenting or clinging, you step into curiosity. What can I learn here? This habit nurtures humility. To see everyone as a teacher is to admit you do not already know everything. Children, elders, friends, strangers, all hold wisdom in their actions, whether intentional or not. A child's wonder teaches simplicity. An elder's silence teaches endurance. Even the mistakes of others become mirrors, showing what paths not to follow. Life ceases to feel random because every encounter holds meaning. The practice also transforms conflict. When someone offends you, the instinct is to resist or retaliate. But if you see them as a teacher, the question changes. What is this moment showing me about my triggers? What boundary needs strengthening? What compassion can I practice? The conflict itself becomes less about winning and more about learning. This shift reduces bitterness and strengthens resilience. Teachers appear not only in people you admire, but in those you resist. The co-worker who tests your patience is teaching you to develop calm. The critic who challenges you is teaching you to separate truth from ego. Even those who harm you may inadvertently teach the importance of self-respect and courage. By framing difficulties this way, suffering becomes less wasted, it becomes transformed into growth. This perspective also deepens gratitude. When you realize everyone contributes to your learning, you stop taking encounters for granted. The cashier at the store, the driver on the road, the neighbor you rarely greet, all become part of your spiritual training. Life feels interconnected, not fragmented. Gratitude grows because the ordinary world reveals itself as full of lessons. The habit does not mean blind acceptance of harm. Seeing someone as a teacher does not excuse their actions. It simply means you refuse to leave the encounter empty-handed. Even betrayal can teach you discernment. Even cruelty can teach you the necessity of boundaries. In this way, nothing is wasted. Every experience adds to your understanding, whether joyful or painful. Children naturally embody this practice. They learn from everything, curious and open, unashamed of not knowing. To see teachers everywhere is to recover this childlike openness while combining it with adult wisdom. You stop assuming you already understand and instead approach life with a mind that is willing to be shaped. This habit strengthens compassion. When you see someone as a teacher, you also begin to see their struggles. The impatient driver may be burdened by unseen stress. The rude stranger may be carrying pain. Recognizing this does not excuse their behavior, but it allows compassion to arise alongside learning. The lesson is not only about your own patience, but about seeing the humanity in others. In families, this practice changes dynamics. Parents often think of themselves as teachers, but children also teach parents about patience, about unconditional love, about letting go of control. Partners teach each other daily, sometimes in harmony, sometimes through friction. By acknowledging this, relationships become less about dominance and more about mutual growth. The habit also strengthens self-awareness. Each time someone provokes a reaction in you, it is a signal to look inward. What is being revealed about your attachments, fears, or expectations? People act as mirrors, reflecting parts of yourself you may not notice otherwise. Seeing them as teachers makes you willing to face these reflections rather than avoid them. Over time, this perspective reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as separate from the flow of life, but as a constant student of it. Every interaction becomes part of training the heart, softening pride, strengthening resilience, deepening love. This mindset keeps you humble, curious, and open, even in old age. Practical application is simple. Each evening, recall a few people you encountered that day. Ask, what did each one teach me? Write it down or reflect quietly. The lessons may be small, a reminder to listen, to slow down, to stand firm. Over weeks and months, you will see patterns emerge. The world itself becomes a vast classroom, and you are always learning. This habit also weakens envy and arrogance. When you see someone succeed, instead of resenting them, you learn from their dedication. When you see someone fail, instead of judging, you learn from their mistakes. Comparison turns into education. Others no longer threaten your self-worth because you are too busy learning from them. Even strangers can leave lasting lessons. A smile from someone you will never meet again may teach you the power of small kindness. A brief conflict may teach you the cost of harsh words. These encounters show that teachers do not always announce themselves. They appear in fleeting moments, and attentiveness is required to notice. In the end, seeing teachers everywhere is about transformation of perception. The world no longer feels divided into allies and obstacles, but becomes a continuous field of learning. Gratitude grows, compassion deepens, humility strengthens, and wisdom expands. Life becomes less about resisting or clinging, and more about receiving and growing. To live this way is to carry a quiet openness into every moment. You no longer demand that life be easy or that people always behave kindly. Instead, you recognize that even in difficulty, lessons wait. With this perspective, no moment is wasted, no person irrelevant, no encounter empty. Every step becomes part of the path, and every person becomes part of your awakening. When you begin to see teachers everywhere, life itself becomes a classroom, and every person holds a lesson worth noticing. But learning from others is only half the journey. The other half is turning inward, training the mind to stop chasing what it already has enough of. Craving fuels restlessness, and restlessness steals peace. In a world that constantly whispers, more possessions, more praise, more stimulation, the practice of pausing and saying inwardly, enough, becomes an act of quiet rebellion. Practicing enoughness in small choices is not about rejecting ambition or refusing joy. It is about recognizing the moment when seeking turns into grasping, when enjoyment tips into craving, when presence is lost to the hunger for more. By pausing mid-scroll, mid-bite, or mid-task to affirm enoughness, you interrupt the endless loop of dissatisfaction and remind yourself that peace is already available here. This habit reconditions the mind. Normally, dopamine drives us forward: one more bite, one more video, one more achievement. But this drive never delivers lasting contentment. Each gain fades quickly, leaving the hunger stronger. Enoughness breaks this cycle. It says, I have received what I needed from this moment, and I do not need to keep chasing. With repetition, the craving pathways weaken, and the habit of contentment strengthens. Food offers a clear place to practice. Midway through a meal, pause and ask, am I nourished? Do I need more, or do I simply want more? This pause often reveals that the body has had enough, while the mind is pushing for excess. Choosing to stop at enough cultivates gratitude for nourishment and prevents the heaviness of indulgence. Over time, eating becomes less about chasing flavor and more about honoring the body's true needs. Scrolling through endless feeds is another opportunity. The mind can fall into hours of consuming information, none of which satisfies. By pausing mid-scroll and saying, enough, you break the trance. You remind yourself that no amount of content will bring peace, that clarity comes not from more input, but from presence. Practicing this regularly frees hours of life that would otherwise dissolve into distraction. Work too benefits from this practice. Many people push themselves endlessly, believing one more task, one more hour, one more success will finally secure peace. Yet satisfaction remains elusive. By pausing mid-task and saying, enough for now, you create space to rest and return with clarity. Productivity does not decline, it improves, because the mind works best when balanced, not when exhausted. This habit also nurtures gratitude. Each time you stop at enough, you acknowledge the sufficiency of what is present. You recognize that satisfaction does not require excess. Gratitude arises because you are no longer focused on what is missing, but on what is already here. This shift dissolves the sense of scarcity that fuels craving. Enoughness also strengthens discipline. Craving is powerful, but discipline grows each time you resist it. By practicing in small choices, you build the strength to apply it in larger areas of life: finances, relationships, ambitions. The mind trained to stop at enough in a meal or a scroll is better prepared to stop at enough when tempted by greed, overwork, or endless consumption. Relationships improve with this practice as well. Many conflicts arise from the belief that others must give us more attention, more affirmation, more agreement. By practicing enoughness, you learn to appreciate what is offered without demanding excess. Relationships become lighter, less strained by unspoken expectations. Gratitude replaces resentment, and connection deepens. The practice also cultivates joy. When you stop at enough, you savor more deeply what you have. The bite of food tastes richer when not drowned by excess. The moment of rest feels fuller when not overshadowed by endless striving. The brief laugh, the simple gesture, the small success, each becomes more precious when not compared to an imagined more. Enoughness also protects the environment. Much of ecological harm comes from endless consumption. By practicing sufficiency in daily life, you naturally reduce waste. You take what you need, not more. This shift, though personal, echoes outward, aligning individual peace with planetary well-being. To begin, choose 1 or 2 daily activities as practice points, perhaps meals, scrolling, or working. Set the intention to pause halfway through and whisper inwardly, "Enough." At first, the mind may resist, craving more, but with patience, the habit strengthens. Over time, you will find yourself pausing in other areas, spontaneously conversations, shopping, even thoughts. The habit expands naturally once rooted. The practice also reveals the difference between need and want. Needs are limited: food, rest, safety, connection. Wants are infinite. By pausing to affirm enoughness, you learn to honor needs without being enslaved by wants. This distinction simplifies life, reducing unnecessary stress and clarifying priorities. Enoughness nurtures humility. To say, "Enough," is to admit that you do not need to dominate every experience, consume endlessly, or outshine others. It is to step back and honor the limits of the body, the mind, and the world. This humility softens arrogance and fosters balance. The nervous system benefits as well. Constant craving keeps the body in tension, always leaning forward, never resting. Enoughness allows relaxation. The body shifts from grasping to resting, the breath deepens, and calm returns. Practiced regularly, this habit rewires the nervous system for peace rather than restlessness. Over months and years, the practice reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as someone defined by endless pursuit, but as someone rooted in sufficiency. You remain ambitious, but ambition is balanced by gratitude. You still enjoy pleasures, but without compulsion. You carry an inner steadiness that external abundance cannot provide, and external scarcity cannot take away. Practicing enoughness in small choices is not denial, it is liberation. It frees you from the cycle of craving, from the endless whisper of more. It teaches that peace is not found in the next bite, the next scroll, the next task, but in recognizing the sufficiency of this moment. And when this becomes habit, life itself feels lighter, calmer, and infinitely more abundant. When the mind learns the practice of enoughness, craving loosens its grip and the heart rests in sufficiency. Yet even with this discipline, there remain moments that test peace, most sharply moments of conflict. A single harsh word, a raised tone, a disagreement that strikes deep can unravel calm in seconds. In such moments, the practice is not about stopping desire, but about stopping reaction. The simplest tool, always available, is the breath. By committing to one conscious inhale and exhale before replying in tense conversations, you anchor yourself in awareness and open the door for wisdom to enter, where impulse once ruled. Conflict often escalates, not because of the first word spoken, but because of the second, the third, the chain of replies that build without pause. Each reaction sharpens the fire, each comeback adds fuel. Breath interrupts this chain. A single moment of awareness drawing air into the lungs, feeling it expand, releasing it slowly creates space, and in that space, the mind sees choices. You are no longer dragged by instinct. You are guided by presence. The habit may appear too small to matter, but its strength lies in its simplicity. The nervous system reacts quickly in conflict, sending the body into fight or flight. Breath slows this cascade. Inhaling fully signals safety to the body, releasing tension in muscles and calming the racing heart. Exhaling slowly grounds the mind, shifting it from reactivity to balance. This physical shift creates the possibility of responding with clarity rather than aggression. Using the breath as anchor also trains humility. When you pause, you acknowledge that your immediate reaction is not always the wisest. This humility does not weaken you, it strengthens you. It allows you to step back from the grip of ego, which demands to win, to prove, to dominate. Instead, you allow truth and compassion to find space. One breath may not solve the conflict, but it changes its direction from escalation to possibility. This practice also preserves relationships. Words spoken in anger leave scars that apologies cannot always heal. By anchoring in breath before replying, you protect the bond. You may still speak firmly, still address wrongs, but without the extra sting of unnecessary cruelty. Breath allows firmness without hostility, truth without destruction. Over time, this habit builds trust. Others feel safer with you, knowing you do not lash out blindly. Breath also teaches patience. In conflict, urgency presses hard the demand to reply, to defend, to strike back. But a conscious breath reminds you that not everything needs to be answered immediately. Often silence, even brief, allows tension to soften. Patience enters where haste once reigned, and with patience, wisdom has a chance to emerge. This habit is not limited to spoken conflict. It applies equally to written words, emails, messages, posts. Before sending, pause for one breath. That breath may save you from regret, from words that cannot be unsent. It may reveal that silence is stronger than reply. It may show you a kinder phrasing, a more truthful expression. In this way, the breath becomes a filter, protecting both you and others from harm. Practicing this daily builds resilience. At first, you may forget, swept away by the heat of emotion. But each time you remember, the habit strengthens. Eventually, the body itself begins to pause naturally, as if breath has become a shield. Conflict still arises, but it no longer controls you. The difference is not that life becomes free of tension, but that you remain free within it. This practice also deepens self-awareness. Conflict often reveals hidden wounds, old fears, pride, insecurities. By pausing with breath, you notice these triggers rather than acting from them unconsciously. You see where the reaction truly comes from, and in seeing, you have the chance to heal. The breath is both anchor and mirror, steadying you while showing you what lies beneath. In families, this habit transforms dynamics. Parents who pause before reacting to children's misbehavior respond with guidance rather than rage. Partners who breathe before replying prevent arguments from spiraling into harm. Even among siblings or friends, the breath cools fire before it spreads. The effect ripples outward, creating homes and communities where conflict no longer means destruction. Breath as anchor also nourishes compassion. In the pause, you not only calm yourself but also see the other more clearly. Behind their harsh words may be fear, pain, or confusion. By breathing first, you give yourself the space to notice this. Compassion does not mean excusing harm, but it allows you to respond with understanding rather than blind retaliation. This practice integrates with all the others. Enoughness softens craving, but breath softens conflict. Together they form a balanced mind, one not ruled by desire or by anger. Breath connects directly to the body, to the present, to life itself. It is always available, requiring no special conditions. Wherever conflict arises, the breath waits, ready to anchor you back to peace. Over months and years, this habit reshapes identity. You are no longer someone tossed about by every sharp word or tense exchange. You become steady, grounded, reliable. Others trust your presence. Conflicts still come, but they no longer define your state of mind. You carry an anchor within, silent but strong, found in the simple act of breathing. To commit to one conscious breath before replying in conflict is to reclaim choice. It is to remember that peace is not found by avoiding tension, but by meeting it wisely. A single breath is small, yet it can prevent words that wound, preserve bonds that matter, and reveal truths hidden by anger. With practice, this habit becomes natural, and conflict, instead of being a source of endless suffering, becomes a training ground for strength, patience, and compassion. Breath as anchor in moments of conflict shows that peace is not about avoiding fire, but about holding steady within it. Yet, even when conflict subsides, the subtler challenge arises: the wandering mind. Attention slips away countless times a day, drifting into memories, worries, or fantasies. Many respond to this drift with harshness, scolding themselves for failing to stay present. But judgment only deepens restlessness. The wiser path is to return attention with compassion. Each time you notice the drift, you gently smile inwardly and come back. This habit does not build rigidity, it builds resilience. The wandering of the mind is natural. Thoughts arise on their own, often without invitation. To expect unbroken focus is to fight the very nature of consciousness. What matters is not preventing the drift, but training the response to it. When you notice yourself lost in thought and return kindly, you are strengthening awareness and softening self-criticism at the same time. The return itself is the practice, not the failure. Responding with compassion turns distraction into teacher. Instead of frustration, you learn patience. Instead of shame, you learn kindness. Each return becomes proof that attention can be reclaimed without violence toward yourself. This builds resilience because it prepares you for setbacks in all areas of life. Just as attention wanders in meditation, effort falters in work, discipline weakens in habits, and emotions overwhelm in relationships. In each case, the real power lies not in never drifting, but in always returning gently. This approach also heals the tendency toward perfectionism. Many people approach mindfulness as a test of control, believing success means constant focus. When they inevitably drift, they judge themselves as weak or incapable. But by practicing compassionate return, you release this illusion. You understand that perfection is not the goal, presence island, and presence is renewed with every gentle return, no matter how many times it is needed. Returning attention with kindness also shifts the nervous system. Judgment tightens the body, creating tension and anxiety. Compassion relaxes it, creating safety. When you smile inwardly at your own wandering, the body softens, the breath steadies, and attention naturally returns. Over time, the nervous system learns that presence is not linked to punishment, but to kindness, making it easier to sustain. The practice also deepens self-knowledge. By observing where the mind drifts, you see your hidden concerns and desires. Without judgment, these patterns become information rather than sources of shame. You may notice a recurring worry, an unresolved memory, or a longing. Returning compassionately allows you to acknowledge these patterns without being enslaved by them. Awareness grows without harshness. Compassionate return also nurtures humility. It reminds you that the mind is not fully under your command, that wandering is part of being human. Instead of trying to dominate thought, you learn to guide it with patience. This humility builds gentleness, both toward yourself and toward others. If you can forgive your own mind for wandering, you can forgive others for their stumbles. This habit reshapes discipline. Many believe discipline means harshness, but true discipline is consistency without cruelty. Returning attention with compassion teaches this. You still train the mind, but without punishment. You become firm, yet gentle, steady, yet kind. This form of discipline lasts longer because it does not exhaust the spirit. In relationships, this practice reduces harshness. If you train yourself to meet your own wandering with kindness, you extend the same attitude outward. When others lose focus, make mistakes, or falter, you respond with patience rather than judgment. Compassion for self becomes compassion for others, deepening trust and softening conflict. The habit also teaches impermanence. Every drift shows how quickly the mind changes. Every return shows how quickly peace can be restored. You begin to see that distraction is not permanent, and neither is focus. Both come and go, like waves. This awareness makes you less anxious about losing attention, because you know you can always return. Practical steps are simple. In meditation, when you notice the mind wandering, gently acknowledge it thinking, drifting, worrying. Then smile inwardly and return to breath, body, or sound. Do not scold or strain. Treat it as if you were guiding a child gently by the hand, not dragging them harshly. With repetition, this response becomes instinctive. The habit extends beyond meditation. While working, if you notice yourself distracted, pause and return with kindness. While listening to someone, if your attention drifts, smile inwardly and return. Even in conflict, if your mind is consumed by anger, compassionately acknowledge the drift and return to breath. This makes presence portable, available in every moment of life. Over time, the accumulation of gentle returns builds resilience. You learn not to give up when distracted, not to collapse into self-criticism. Instead, you become someone who always returns, who always begins again, no matter how many times needed. This is strength, not weakness. It is the difference between rigidity, which breaks under strain, and resilience, which bends and endures. The practice also nourishes joy. When you smile inwardly at your own wandering, you cultivate lightness. Presence becomes less of a burden and more of a gift. You stop treating mindfulness as a heavy duty and begin to experience it as a gentle homecoming. Joy arises not from perfection, but from the simple act of returning again and again. Over months and years, this habit transforms identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who constantly fails at mindfulness and start seeing yourself as someone who continuously returns. The story shifts from failure to resilience, from harshness to kindness. This shift affects not only mindfulness, but every part of life. Returning lost attention with compassion, not judgment, is a lesson in how to live. It shows that setbacks are not proof of weakness, but opportunities to begin again. It teaches that strength is not rigidity, but gentleness that endures. It reveals that peace is not found in flawless focus, but in the willingness to return, again and again, with kindness. And when this becomes habit, you discover that every drift is not an enemy of mindfulness, it is an invitation to practice. Peace is not something distant waiting for the perfect moment. It is built slowly, in the smallest choices of each day. Letting go of ego in micro-annoyances, eating with reflection, training in impermanence, holding silence, walking with intention, bowing inwardly, pausing words through the three gates, carrying an empty bowl, taking micro-meditations, releasing the second arrow, finding dignity in posture, extending kindness to strangers, hearing sounds as bells, touching the earth, resting in non-doing, journaling paradox, rejoicing in others' joy, drinking water with reverence, letting go of clutter, remembering death, seeing teachers everywhere, practicing enoughness, anchoring breath in conflict, and returning attention with compassion. Each habit is small, but together they shape an unshakable life. Strength is not about force, and peace is not about escape. They grow when you train the mind, soften the heart, and live with awareness in the ordinary. These habits are simple, but practiced daily. They will carry you through storms with calm and guide you into joy that nothing outside can steal. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these habits speaks to you the most, the one you feel ready to begin today? Leave a comment below. I'd love to know how you'll bring these practices into your life. And if you found value here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next journey we take together toward peace and strength.